in this episode of Watching the Watchers, we've got a lot to get into. We're going to start off by talking about the Arbery trial. Now, Arbery is not on trial. This is really the Travis and Gregory McMichaels trial, along with the Roddy Brown defendant. The three different defendants have all been charged with various forms of felony murder, and the trial is just getting started. We're picking up jury selection, and it's an interesting case, not necessarily for the facts, although the facts are interesting, but there was a lot of antics that took place in court today, particularly with Roddy's attorney. His defense lawyer came out and was making some pretty interesting statements in court today. And so we're going to take a look at that. I've got several different clips, and we're going to break down what they're arguing all about. They are still in the process of questioning jurors because they're having a difficult time getting a panel of people who haven't seen the Ahmaud Arbery video. So we're going to be talking all about that in our first segment. In our second segment, we're going to talk about the new United States gender policy. I know many people out there have been very excited for this policy, just sitting around, sort of looking down and around your body, wondering what to do with this thing. Fortunately, the United States government has come out and they've dictated what the new gender policy is going to be for equity and equality. And so we're going to go through that. It's a 42-page document. And because I want to make sure that I don't encourage anybody to gouge their eyeballs or their earballs out, we're not going to go reading through the entirety of that document. We're going to hear from some other people. We're going to learn about something called the Lindy Effect, and we're going to sort of apply that to a lot of these gender identity conversations that are currently well underway. And we're also going to listen to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, of course, an author, clinical psychologist, somebody who's a national best-selling author. He had something very interesting to say about equity amongst the genders. And so we're going to see what he has to say about that as well. And then in our final segment, some new information coming out in the Alec Baldwin shooting. The district attorney is now coming out and saying, well, we're actually looking at criminal charges. And so this new district attorney, she's out of New Mexico in a very small little precinct. She's got about 70 employees under her. She ran for election in 2020, unopposed, and won, of course. And so we're going to look at more of this case. And yesterday we had a question about the bullets. In particular, what does a real bullet look like versus a blank? And so we're going to sort of revisit that issue in the context of potential criminal charges. If you want to be a part of the show, of course, we are recording this show over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you're a supporter or a member over there, you get access to this form and the secret YouTube unlisted chat link as well. And you can ask a question using this form. You just select the topic that we're on, put your name in there, and ask a question. And so it's pretty convenient, and we're going to take all of those questions at the end of the show. As always, we do our best to make sure we get to all of them. If I skip over it, it's just because it's in the sake of time. But if you can't keep them in order, that always helps. And feel free to use it. Use it hardly. I mean, don't hardly use it. I mean, use it hardly. All right. And so if you're looking for segments of the show, different clips that you can share with friends or families, those are over at the Clips channel at Robert Grueller ESQ/clips. And one final thing I forgot to mention. Before we jump into the content of the day, I want to wish a very hugely, bigly happy birthday to my father, my stepfather. Greg is an amazing man, and he is somebody who is celebrating his birthday today. Very, very excited to wish him a happy birthday. He's somebody who's been in my life for a long time. He has been like an amazing friend, a father to me, and so I want to wish him a very happy birthday. And just to make sure that we do something special, I actually brought a picture of Mr. Greg from my office. I have this picture of our family, and if you saw our live stream on Locals this morning, then you probably saw Joey. Joey was on Locals this morning. This is Greg over here, my stepdad. Amazing man. Of course, this is my mom, and this is my family picture. And so I just wanted to, kind of embarrass him a little bit. Make sure we got to wish him a big happy birthday. He does watch the show a lot, and he's a big supporter, and he loves all of you. And so we wanted to just make that point very clear. Happy birthday, Greg. Amazing man. We're very grateful to have you in our lives. Okay, and so without any further ado, let's jump into the content of the day. Let's do it. Ahmaud Arbery trial is still warming up. We haven't started with opening arguments yet because we're still having a difficult time finding a jury. Of course, like many other criminal cases like this, when they hit the national media, it becomes very difficult to actually move forward with the trial and get unbiased jurors because every single juror has already seen large parts of the case in the media. They have seen it on Twitter, on TikTok, on Facebook. You've seen the images time and time again. You probably watched some of them here on YouTube, maybe even on this channel. We talked about this some time ago when this first came out and hit the news. We had an amazing person, part of our channel here, a guy by the name of Ma Fox was in the house, and he put this together for us back then, said that he wanted to cover some of this stuff, showing that Travis, one of the defendants in the case, was pointing his shotgun at Arbery prior to even being 20 feet away. And so he actually made these two GIFs for us, and they show you kind of exactly what's going on, right? This is before the shooting took place, so nothing here that is content warning. Two different speeds here, and what you see on the left-hand side is sort of a slower motion. You have Ahmaud Arbery running towards the vehicle. The vehicle was being driven by the son, who is being charged with murder for shooting Ahmaud Arbery, and the father is back here, and he's also being charged with murder. And so you can see what Ma Fox, what his argument was, and what many people are arguing. What my first assessment was that yes, you know, the gun is already being drawn up here by the son before he's really even, you know, in danger. Then what we see as the rest of the video goes on, Ahmaud actually stops running, goes around the car, kind of gets chased to some degree, turns around, the shooting takes place right there, and we're not going to show that, of course, on YouTube, because YouTube will flag your video and then you have to delete it, otherwise you get in YouTube trouble jail. So we don't want that to happen, but that was the scene. This took place last year, and it was sort of a very messy case because there was a prosecutor who kind of didn't want to prosecute it and gave it to somebody else who also didn't want to prosecute it because the defendants, the people doing the shooting, Travis and Gregory, they got a lot of close connections to law enforcement over there in Georgia. And so we're going to go through some of this case today. They were on day 6 of jury selection, and it's been kind of a mess. They really have not been able to pin down many jurors. Judge is hopeful that they can finish it this week and then start with the opening arguments and the actual case in chief starting next week. But we're just not there yet. Let's take a look at the board, the makeup of what the trial is going to look like so we can get our bearings straight. See here in the middle, we've got the judge, Timothy Walmsley, and I took a picture of him sort of looking befuddled, as you can see, which you're going to see why. He has an amazing facial expression that we are going to get to here soon enough, because he's just sort of flabbergasted by what he's hearing in court. Good stuff. We have, of course, Travis McMichael. He is the son. He is the shooter. We have Gregory McMichael, who is the father, who is also a former police officer and very interconnected with a lot of the prosecutors and county attorneys out there in this jurisdiction. We have their friend. This is really William Bryan. This is Roddy, and his nickname, William Roddy Bryan, is somebody who was also a part of this entourage. They were kind of chasing Arbery around. And then they're all represented by a number of different attorneys. So Travis McMichael, represented by Jason Sheffield. He's a defense attorney. We have Gregory McMichael. My understanding, he's being represented by 2 defense lawyers. I think it's a husband and wife team. Could be, I think it's husband and wife. We have Franklin Hogue, and then we have Laura Hogue. And so it's kind of this husband and wife law team. Some, you know, you probably have seen that around your local jurisdiction. Husband and wife law team, we're going to get you all the money in the world. And you go, wow, they seem like a happy couple. Surely they would never let me down. Yeah, well, I'm not married, so I can't take that angle. But we have Kevin Gough, also. He's a defense attorney. And this guy, I got to tell you, is extremely interesting. He is representing William Bryan, and he has a couple clips that we're going to listen to today. He's talking about Dorothy and, you know, Wonderland and all sorts of just interesting stuff. So we'll take a look at what is going on. That's the defense. Now, why are they being charged with crimes, with murder and felony murder and false imprisonment and all of those things? Of course, we saw the video, the allegation being that they were chasing Ahmaud Arbery over here after he was sort of running out of a house, and they thought that he was somebody who was shoplifting. They chased him down. Of course, he's dead, and so they're being charged with murder there. The current prosecutor, who was assigned after several different other prosecutors, is Joyette Holmes, and so she was sort of appointed the prosecutor, the district attorney. I haven't seen much from her actually in trial yet. Instead, we've seen this fellow, and I still don't have his name yet or her name yet. And so I was trying to gather those, but I couldn't find those today. But we have two other prosecutors. This fellow here, we're going to see, did some of the jury selection questions. And this lady over here did some argumentation on some of the motions about some of the media coverage. Another very big figure that is also interesting is this guy, Lee Merritt. And he's the family lawyer. He's not involved in the actual criminal case. He's representing the family on a civil claim against, basically everybody, right? Everybody who covered up the investigation. We know that this never really went anywhere until that actual video of Ahmaud Arbery being shot leaked. It was all going to be swept under the rug. They investigated the case. These defendants were was a former police officer. And so everybody just looked at it and said, no, justified shooting. And we covered it here. We actually read through the statement from one of the district attorneys that said, I reviewed the case. I've been a prosecutor for 400 years and I've looked at everything. And I know that this is not justified, and so they declined criminal charges back then. And I was watching that going, whoa, this is fishy as heck. And that was back in the early days of this channel, my friends, and that was a different show at that time. But we knew back then that this was fishy, and it turned out it was. These are the three defendants who are all being charged. Now, again, right, I'm a defense attorney. I don't care if they're former police officers. I don't care if it's Alec Baldwin. I don't care if it's Derek Chauvin. I don't care if it's Ghislaine Maxwell. Everybody deserves a defense, and when it's time to put on the defense attorney hat, we do that tightly because we've got a lot of business to get down to. But again, right, we want to make sure that everybody's getting a fair shake, that not either side in the justice system is getting an unfair advantage. Typically, that goes to the prosecution, but we also don't want that to go to the defense, right? We don't want people who are former police officers or, gargantuan celebrities or who are part of the political elite to get out and escape justice that you or I would not ever escape, that would be pursued and prosecuted under a different standard if you're part of a disfavored class, for example. So we have these three guys, the McMichaels and Roddy Bryan, and the allegation was, this is basically what was happening, was that Ahmaud Arbery allegedly was poking around these construction buildings, and somebody didn't like him doing that, I guess, or there were allegations that he was stealing stuff. Or we're going to see a lot more of this in the trial, but I think it's all irrelevant. The guy was running down the street, and unless there was somebody in here that he was, murdering or something, right? You don't get to use deadly force to protect property. It's just not something that we allow in the United States. You don't get to kill somebody to protect your purse. Now, if you're protecting your life, that's a different conversation because a life is worth protecting. A purse is not. We value life over property, and so you don't get to chase people down and shoot them. So some interesting things have been going on. First and foremost, let's get the sort of bland stuff out of the way. Jury selection is going about as well as you'd expect. We've got our feet wet on this topic, talking a lot about Derek Chauvin. We covered all of the different jurors back then, and remember, we even had little emojis from them. I mean, we went hardcore on that case. Not going to do that in the Ahmaud Arbery case, just due to the sake of time. We've got the Kyle Rittenhouse case also starting very soon, and so we're going to divert most of our attention over there. But that being said, we're still going through a lot of the jury selection difficulties that we saw in the Chauvin case. Right? Everybody has heard about the case, especially if they live in that area, and so finding somebody who is unbiased, I think, is going to be very difficult, as they are finding out themselves. New York Post says that the trial hits a snag. Search for impartial jurors is posing a challenge in the murder of the three white men, of course, accused of killing Ahmaud Arbery, a black jogger. Which I'm not, again, I don't know that he was jogging. So you got to take all of these characterizations with a grain of salt, but trial will tell. Potential jurors in the highly anticipated trial have admitted to being swayed by the video allegedly showing Arbery being shot at close range last year. Somebody said, I saw the news footage, I saw the video of the crime. I already formed a guilty opinion of the crime, one juror told somebody last week. Another said, some things you just can't unsee. Isn't that the truth? So the county superior judge, county court, said that he wants an initial pool of 64 jurors, from which a final panel of 12 jurors and then 4 alternates will be suspected. But so far, only 23 have been picked for the pool after 1 week of proceedings. Okay. So let's break down what's happening here. This is sort of similar to what we saw in the Chauvin case, but we didn't see, I think, this portion of it, at least not on our channel. But what they're doing now is they're bringing in just huge swaths of people into this juror room. And so I'm going to show you this screen. This is one of the prosecutors here. We have a camera angle in court, kind of looking up everybody's noses at the podium, which is just, on par for the production quality with a lot of these courts. But we're sort of looking that angle. And what he's doing is he's looking out over a huge room of people that we don't ever get to see. Right, probably all social distance and masked up all over the courtroom. So it could be, 100 people or more. I don't know how big the courtroom is or how big those panels are. But what we're going to see is now he is asking them questions as a group. And what the jurors are going to be doing is they're just going to hold up a card that says their number, that says a juror 75. And so he's going to say, who wants a turkey for lunch? 75. Oh, 75 wants turkey. Okay. Who wants ham? 37. All right, 37 wants ham. Right? That same format. Asking a question, not about lunch, but something legal. And then they're writing down the numbers, and those jurors are going to be the subject of conversation, right? Whether they're going to inquire further into those jurors, or whether they're going to be struck for cause, or whether whatever's going to happen with the conversation between the defense, the prosecution, and the judge, but they're going to hone that big group down into a smaller group and then actually pick from that smaller group is what they were telling us. So let's listen in. This is one of the early questions from the prosecutor, who's asking about whether anybody who is sitting for this deliberation, whether they've had something stolen, a firearm or something like that, from their gun, from their car, from their home. Here is the prosecutor.
Please raise your hand if you or a close family friend or family member has ever had a handgun, rifle, or shotgun, any kind of firearm stolen out of your car or home. Firearm stolen out of your car or home. It's got to be a close family friend, somebody that you talk to quite often. 482, 495, 496.
Wow. So 3 people had a gun stolen, right? And so if you're a prosecutor, well, why might you be asking that question? Maybe those people think that Arbery was going to steal something. Maybe like a gun or something out of their car. And so maybe those individuals, 497, maybe they're all going to be prejudiced or biased against Arbery and in favor of the defendants. So maybe the prosecutor is saying, nope, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone, because they may be sympathetic towards reacting to somebody stealing something, which is going to be the defense claim. We have now, this is a defense attorney. This guy's representing Travis. He has a different question. Now let's see if we can tease out what he's asking about. Why is he trying to identify these people who maybe voted a certain way? Here he is. This is Sheffield in court today.
Have you ever decided to vote on a particular political candidate based on their platform or their policy on limiting gun rights? You've chosen a candidate because you like the platform to limit gun rights or the types of guns that may be in circulation or may be available. And that you are 479. Thank you.
479. All right, so I actually increased the audio on the other clips. This was before I did that. But a loose question. How many people out there have ever voted for a particular candidate because of their position on gun policy, essentially because they wanted to restrict your ability to possess a firearm? Not many people in that room, huh? The other guy was talking about how many people had guns stolen from them. He got three bingos on that one, but not on this one. This one, he was asking essentially, who here is a gun-grabbing Democrat liberal? Really? And one person raised their hand. I am. I'd like to take everybody's guns. And so what is he going to do? Probably boot that person out of there because they're not Second Amendment people. There's somebody who's going to say, well, you should never chase anybody with a gun. Guns are dangerous. Look what happened with Alec Baldwin. So they're looking to exclude those other jurors. And so they're just asking these broad strokes questions. Then they're going to be able to dive in further and exercise their strikes. Very interesting. Now, this is where that was jury selection. Now we're going to change gears a little bit because in the Ahmaud case, they were talking about the media, of course, because everything now is a media sensation. This case is no different. And we're going to hear from Roddy Bryan's lawyer, this fella, attorney Gough, G-O-U-G-H, I think is how you spell it, or Gough or something like that. Gough is how he pronounces it. And he was in court today. And he is very unhappy about the Ahmaud Arbery family lawyer, Lee Merritt. Not happy at all about this, right? This is all media stuff. And so this guy, Lee Merritt, is out there in the media talking to everybody about the Ahmaud Arbery case. We're going to hear from him. I have a clip from him. Seems like a pretty reasonable fella. But he's out there hitting the media circuit. And this guy is very unhappy about it. And so we're going to watch several clips from him because it gets kind of progressively more amazing. And tell the judge, you're going to see the judge's face at the end of this thing. He goes, what did I just witness? I felt the same way. So let's listen into this defense attorney. Very interesting argument. It's actually not a bad argument because of what we saw in the Chauvin trial. So he's got a lot of animation here. Let me see what you think about this. Here is Roddy Bryan's defense lawyer in court, upset about Lee Merritt, the Ahmaud Arbery family, hitting the media.
It bothers me that we have an attorney who is, I believe, representing the Arbery family in their civil case in federal court, who is basically instructing for any juror that wishes to learn through black media how to bypass the jury selection process established by law that this court has labored so hard to ensure was fair to all parties. Specifically, when Lee Merritt is discussing this case with April Ryan, he explains that knowledge of the case alone is not enough to disqualify. He states the question is whether they can set aside what they know. He then states, we don't say often enough. You know what? I can set that aside. I mean, he's basically inviting jurors to just, like Dorothy, there's no place like home, there's no place like home, there's no place by home. We're indoctrinating jurors to say, I can be fair, I can be fair, I can be fair.
Wow. Okay. Did you hear that little phrase? Did it make your ears perk up a little bit? When he said that he was noticing that this was percolating and permeating all throughout black media? Whoa. What? He said that. He said there's a lot of this stuff going around black media. I went, what? What did you say? In court in Georgia, on the record, openly? And we're just getting warmed up on this, folks, because he's getting into it. Okay, so it's an interesting approach. Now, the underlying point that he's making is interesting, of course, given the fact that we saw in the Chauvin case, particularly Brandon Mitchell, somebody who said, I was not ever at a George Floyd rally. Turns out he was. Turns out he was also on a podcast. Turns out he also was wearing a shirt that said, get your knee off our necks, prior to ever making it on the Chauvin jury, talking about, nudging his way, fighting his way to get on that jury panel so that he could perform justice. And those are like verbatim quotes. We covered it here on the channel. And so you start to think, well, that's very interesting. Now you have sort of this social justice effort, and this is going to go both ways, right? You can see, look, if we really are living in a white, patriarchal, racist, monstrous, patriarchal tyranny, well, then you're going to get a bunch of, I guess, white people who are going to go on juries and then, convict all of their, whoever they hate so much, something like that, right? So my criticism of this whole conversation was that we're going to be weaponizing juries. You're going to get people from different demographics who don't give a whit about any of the allegations in the criminal case that just want to get on a jury panel and convict somebody of a particular demographic. And I thought, well, that's basically the end of the justice system if this is where that goes. But of course, you have to have a limiting principle on this. So this defense attorney is out here screaming from the rooftops about Lee Merritt, who's just kind of going around the media and talking about the case. It's not even anything that's particularly interesting. Here he was on this very liberal Democracy Now! Talking just kind of nuts and bolts stuff. Here he is. I'm sure he's more, I'm sure he's throwing roundhouses elsewhere, but this isn't even anything really controversial.
The jury selection process in Glenn County is going to be difficult. It's always a challenge to find neutral jurors. But in a place like Glenn County, for one of the most high-profile cases in the history of Georgia, if not of the country, it's impossible to find anyone in that small community who has not heard about what happened to Ahmaud. The prosecutors and the defense, the judge as well, they kind of accepted this as a reality, that they're going to be dealing with jurors who are not blank slates like we prefer. The jurors that have come in, however, many of them went to school with the accused. At least one of the jurors who, to my surprise, was actually qualified to sit on the jury, works in the office of Jackie Johnson, works in the Glenn County prosecutor office, was hired by Jackie Johnson, campaigned for Jackie Johnson after the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, and knows Greg McMichael personally. In court, she referred to him sort of casually as Greg. And the court said that somebody with that many connections whose job it was, she was basically the custodian of the records, which means a lot of the evidence that we were viewing in court was signed by her. And the court said, despite the fact that she could be called as a witness, that she was qualified to sit on the jury. I'm sure the prosecution will use a preemptory strike later on down the line to remove her from the jury. But the fact that she wasn't disqualified for what is called cause is beyond me. So far, they've been able to get together 23 qualified jurors, over 600 subpoenas that were sent out, or jury summons that were sent out. Of those 23, the magic number they're trying to get to is 64. And then the jury selection process actually begins, where the prosecution and defense can begin selecting and striking jurors.
Yeah, so pretty standard analysis. Nothing even there that is overly controversial. And I went on his Twitter account. He's somebody who is a progressive. He's a lefty. He's somebody who is running for office in Texas. And, you know, he's got a lot of opinions that are not my opinions, but he's not saying anything that's like outside of the ordinary or anything crazy. And this attorney, Gough, he's sort of losing it over it. So we heard already on the podium, right? He went up to the podium, flagged this for the court's attention, said, hey, this attorney, Lee Merritt, is out there. And not just Lee Merritt, other people in the black media who are out there communicating about, you know, the case, and they're saying negative things about this court. And so then he gets off the podium, prosecutor comes up, responds, you know, First Amendment, free speech, he can say whatever he wants, this is the media. And then it goes back to attorney Gough, and he goes off for another couple minutes. I've got, I think, 3 clips. They're all, relatively short. They're worth it because we're going to get to the judge's reaction after this little thing that happened in court. Here is Roddy Bryan's actual attorney. You can see Roddy is sitting down here in the bottom right, just kind of watching his attorney right here just go off about Lee Merritt. Here it is.
There is no way to get around the substance of what Lee Merritt is doing. And what troubles me, Your Honor, is this isn't something new. This isn't something of a surprise or a shock. This has been something that the prior elected district attorney in Cobb County, Joyette Holmes, and her legal team has been well aware of from the start, because I have made it all painfully clear in numerous motions that were filed. And if nowhere does she address, and this is somewhat disappointing to me, nowhere does Madam Prosecutor address her duty as an officer of this court to seek justice and not merely convict.
All right, so he's sort of doing something interesting here, which you don't see often in criminal cases. He's kind of shifting the burden back onto the prosecution. And so, again, what we're talking about here is the media conversation that's taking place outside of the courtroom. He's very upset about Lee Merritt, very upset that he's being able to go out there and sort of criticize what's taking place in that courtroom. And he's telling the court right now that I'm disappointed with the prosecutor for not going and investigating those other conversations that are happening, because those are influencing the juries here, right? Those are influencing the jurors that we're trying to have conversations about, is his argument. So it's all circular, it's all sort of interconnected. But where he's going with this, he's sort of telling the prosecutor, you need to go and investigate these other conversations that are taking place. Here he continues.
Instead of quibbling about the authenticity of exhibits, how about this? How about the GBI take 1/zillionth of the zeal that they've devoted to going after these 3 men and go check out those 2 interviews and get copies for the state to present for the court to review so the court can make its own judgment as to how big a problem this is. Because I don't have the capability of doing that. I paid for the premium subscription on YouTube and I still can't get it. Apparently you have to buy some special program, and through a bunch of cumbersome steps you can get somebody at the GBI. If they can do 3D drones and all this other fancy technological stuff we've got in this case, they can get these 2 videos.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure he's still talking. This is all in one long segment. I just broke it up. I'm pretty sure he's still talking about the Lee Merritt videos. So he's unhappy that Lee Merritt went out there and made some statements. He's having a difficult time getting those videos. He goes into court and says, I have YouTube Premium, everybody. Hello. And I still can't download the clips. Apparently I have, I need to go get some fancy technology to do this. There's a website that you can just use. I'll send it to you. Or you can use software called Bandicam, which is also what I use. Very easy. But it is, this big complicated process. And he's saying, well, we should get the Georgia Bureau of Investigation on this, like this state investigatory agency, to go get those videos of Lee Merritt talking about the case. You're going, what? And he's ranting about, not having YouTube Premium and about all this being very complicated. And the rest of the courtroom is just looking around going, what are you talking about? And he's not done yet. Here he is to bring us home.
And I think the court needs to look at him. And let's bear in mind, Your Honor, that's what I can find on a Monday night, at 2 o'clock in the morning. We haven't even scratched the surface of what's out there on Black Twitter and in the Black media.
What?
We haven't even scratched that surface. And the further they get away from the mainstream, the more free Mr. Merritt and other people feel to comment more directly in less, what's the word for it? Less ambiguous ways about what you're trying to accomplish. We have no way of policing that. The state does, and it's their obligation to ensure justice in this case. I would ask the court to direct the district attorney's office,
okay, wait for the judge,
to go look into this and report back to the court.
Watch the judge. Watch the judge.
All right. The motion itself.
Oh, we're going to watch that again. Oh, my goodness. Oh, it's so good. Okay, I don't know if you heard that, folks, but he was going back there. So that defense attorney said specifically, look, we need to get the videos, and we need to get the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to go get those videos. That's what I found on YouTube. I'm having a difficult time downloading this stuff because YouTube Premium is not functioning for me. But the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, they've got drones. They've got a bunch of other complex stuff out there. They can download the videos, and we have to show you, Judge, just what type of egregious conduct is being said out there on the internet, on YouTube Premium, and we have to get to the bottom of this. And by the way, Judge, we are just getting started. If you actually really knew what's going on in Black media and Black Twitter, you jump out of your seat, Judge, because it is just getting outrageous out there. In fact, the more free he says that Black Twitter feels like they are, well, the more unambiguous they get to be in their conversation that's taking place. And you're going, oh my, do you know what year you're in, brother? You are not allowed to talk like that anymore. That is illegal. All right. And so, the judge was just absolutely flabbergasted. They had no idea. He had no idea what to say about this. So let's watch this again. Watch very closely the judge. You can see the micro expressions on his face. He just goes, I can't believe that was just said in my courtroom. And you can tell that anytime somebody doesn't know what to do or what to say, or they have to compose themselves, this judge, if he was in a private room, he'd be laughing his ass off because it's such an outrageous thing that defense attorney just said. But what he does is he goes, well, let me look at the motions. And so he starts flipping through the motions. Oh, yeah, what's going on in this one? Because he doesn't know what to do. Let's watch it one more time just for the fun of it. Here is Judge.
And I think the court needs to look at him. And let's bear in mind, Your Honor, that's what I can find on a Monday night, at 2 o'clock in the morning. We haven't even scratched the surface of what's out there on Black Twitter and in the Black media. We haven't even scratched that surface. And the further they get away from the mainstream, the more free Mr. Merritt and other people feel to comment more directly in less, what's the word for it? Less ambiguous ways about what you're trying to accomplish. We have no way of policing that. The state does, and it's their obligation to ensure justice in this case. I would ask the court to direct the district attorney's office, GBI, to go look into this and report back to the court.
Here it comes.
All right. The motion itself.
Okay, so, oh my gosh, just outstanding. And so we got the judge. Now, what's happening here? Well, we're still in the middle of jury selection, and so we've still got a long road ahead of us. But this was an update that I saw at 11:06 this morning, which I think is on the east. I'm not sure when it is. But Kylie Tracy is doing a good job following this over on Twitter. Says, out of the 20 potential jurors today, about the same number of people, no key players as yesterday. 2 know Brian's fiance. 2 know Brian through association. That's Roddy. 1 knows Greg McMichaels' wife. 1 knows his daughter. 2 knew Arbery. 1 knows Arbery's mother. 2 Arbery's father. And you're just going, oh man, this is just going to be a very long road ahead. So let's see what you have to say about this over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And boy, we went long on that segment, didn't we? Let's see if we have some questions. We have 3 Girlie says, just curious, I know what eyeballs are, but what are earballs? Inquiring minds want to know. Well, they're what comes out of your mouth when you talk about eyeballs and gouging them out. You also got to make sure you gouge out your earballs. Whatever's in there, it's coming out. I don't know if there are actually balls in there, but there's a lot. Aren't there a little bunch of bones like hammers and stuff in there? So that's what I'm talking about. Get it out of there. In the next segment, because it'll make you want to do that. Go Navy 505 says, would you charge negligent homicide or manslaughter, and which has a steeper penalty? It's a good question. First and foremost, I don't recall. We went through the statutes in Georgia, and I don't know how they broke down their homicide statutes. If I recall, they're both being charged with felony murder, and so here's I think a better way to think about it, right? I did not think that they had the ability to go and actually chase him and sort of enclose him as they did. That would be a felony false imprisonment. If you murder somebody as a result of felony false imprisonment, then that's a justifiable charge. Now, self-defense at some point is going to come up. I just don't think it's a winning argument. I mean, if I had to be objective on it, I don't think it is a winning argument. I think that they were the primary aggressors, the instigators. They were not allowing him to flee. They kept re-engaging with Arbery. And so I think, felony murder, which would be the most serious of all of those, would even be appropriate. So I sort of even went up a level on that question. 3 Girlie says, what happens if they can't seat the jury? Would they have to move venues for the trial? Where are the ramifications of not being able to seat a jury where they're located? I mean, I think that they will. I don't know of a situation that I've ever heard of or seen or come across where they've never been able to seat a jury. They just keep going. It's like, run out of people and start bussing people in if you have to. Or, change venues. I mean, that was a potential option that we saw even in the Chauvin case. They were really hesitant to do that. They don't want to do that. But it was something that was asked for. And, if things had gotten worse, I don't know how much worse they could have gotten really. But if they had gotten worse, they would have picked up the trial and moved it. But remember that they already had, when they're preparing for these trials, moving stuff is not really ideal because they are set up, security and recording, and it's a big production. Not to mention they're bussing, hundreds of people through there every day, setting them up in jury panels. Kind of the whole building is going to be on hold until this thing is over. And so no, they don't want to pick that up and move that elsewhere. But, I think that they would just, probably just keep bussing people in until they were able to seat somebody, seat enough people to take it forward. Kareem says, would you consider meeting some of your locals members in person if they happen to pass by Scottsdale one day? Totally open to that, Kareem. I'm totally open to that, provided that you don't mind just swinging by the office for a little bit of time, right? Sometimes people want to go to lunch and coffee and all of that stuff, and I keep a pretty tight schedule. So I'm not, by the time I stop what I'm doing, leave, go to coffee, go to lunch. I don't go to lunches. I very rarely go to dinners and coffees and things like that because it's a lot of work. By the time you get up and go over there, it's 20 minutes. You sit down, it's an hour. It's another 20 minutes to come back. It's another 20 minutes to get reinvested in your work. And so I would love to meet you, but you would have to sort of be okay with just stopping by the office one day, which shouldn't be a problem. We have a nice, big, beautiful office in Scottsdale, and I'd love to just stop by, have you stop by and say hello. No problem at all. Give you a book, give you some swag. We got a bunch of R&R stuff here. Now, Darb says, I might be biased, but I think Roddy should walk free based solely on the fact that Roddy rocks a sweet Alabama bowl cut. LOL, sorry. So Nadab would just say, oh, look at that haircut. Not guilty. Let him go. Bailiff, get the keys. I like it, Nadab. You'd be a good on the jury. Edon Tess says, I know this is broad and hypothetical, and also that one could always claim they felt in physical danger. I'm just wondering, because you said the U.S. law does not support protecting property with deadly force. I wonder just what those limits are. If someone breaks into your house while you were there, you're justified using deadly force against that intruder. Suppose this intruder says, I'm just here to take your stuff. I'm not going to cause you physical harm. Yeah, so that would be, it's a great question, Edon Tess, and these are a lot of fun in sort of law school exams and things that, typically don't happen. But in a situation like this, you put yourself in what's called the reasonable person position. So it's not necessarily what would a particular defendant do, right? What is this intruder saying? I'm just here to take your stuff, right? I'm not going to cause you any harm. It's not about what his subjective intent was. It's not about what that one particular intruder was doing, right? Because he could just say, oh, no, I'm just here. I just want some bread and I'm going to be out of here. And then you would have to adjust and comport the law to match that person's subjective mindset. And we don't do it that way. We take a look at an objective standard, which would be called the reasonable person standard. And we would say, well, what would a reasonable person sitting in their home say or feel if somebody just broke in? Well, they'd probably feel like that person was uninvited, like they were a threat. And regardless of what they said, they were in fact in danger. And then they would be justified in protecting themselves against that intruder. Right, so that would be a little bit different. But the analogy, just to distinguish this, Edon Tess, right, now let's distinguish this so we can flip the argument around and think about it the other side. Let's say that there was no family in that house, and they just had a rental property. A lot of people have rental properties, and they thought, I don't really trust my alarm system, and so I really don't like to pay that $30 a month bill or whatever it is to monitor my alarm. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up guns in the windows and the doors. And so if somebody comes in unannounced, like if they open the door, boom, it just shoots the gun and it kills the intruder. Well, this was something that used to happen in the United States, right? And elsewhere around the world. People would be venturing out into the Old West or into new territories around the country, and they would set up these gun traps, and somebody walked through and got shot and killed. And they came down and they said, well, that's not appropriate because you don't get to shoot and kill somebody to protect your house. Now, if somebody was in there and that person was being threatened in that house, that's a different story. But you don't just get to start killing people because you don't want them to enter into your residence. We value, and this is all general broad strokes conversations, right? There are permutations on how this works all over the place. But there are, in general, we value life over property. You don't just get to shoot somebody because they're running away with your wallet. We want, okay, take the wallet. A wallet is less valuable than somebody's life, even if they are a dirty thief. Okay, so a great question. A lot of nuance in these questions. Speech Unleashed says, do lawyers prefer certain demographics, male, female, old, young, single, married, ethnicity on certain cases? I know movies and TV shows are not a reality, but a lot of them show lawyers going into jury selection looking for certain demographics that they believe will be favorable to their position. Does that not happen in reality? It absolutely happens in reality. It absolutely does. I mean, it can go so detailed that we actually do focus groups. Okay, this is something I've never personally used a focus group, but I've learned how to do it. I know other lawyers do, but it would be an idea. And actually, when I was just in Texas in Arlington, we did a full afternoon on how to use focus groups. And I can see in certain areas where they would be useful, but literally you're sort of picking juries, right? You're bringing in focus groups and you're testing your arguments on the different jurors, and you're sort of studying their demographics and seeing how your arguments land on them, right? Like literally, how does this argument about self-defense work with single moms under the age of 40 who happen to be white? Okay, what'd you think of that? I just gave you that sentence. I made that argument. All single white women under the age of 40, what'd you think? And, they're being paid to be there. And so they're providing their open, feedback about this. And if you can do that, it's a very powerful tool. But again, it's very cost prohibitive. It's only, I think, useful in certain cases. Like I think Ghislaine Maxwell is probably doing it all day. Derek Chauvin, maybe they should have done that. But yeah, you're looking at big, broad strokes. So if you have a bunch of people out there who watch Fox News, right, they might be more conservative and you may not want them on a jury. But if you get a bunch of people who look like they probably are high on marijuana, you probably want that person on your drug case. So you are looking for this, A lot of people sometimes don't want people in higher professions like doctors, lawyers, nurses, because some people think that they might commandeer the jury because of their higher education. People, oh, well, what does the doctor say about it? Okay, well, we're just going to follow whatever the doctor says. So if you're a defense lawyer and you're talking about an assault with trauma to the head type of case, maybe you don't want a doctor on the jury panel. It just kind of depends on the case. Some jurors, some lawyers just say, I don't care. Just give me any jury, flip a coin. Some states now actually limit your ability to even question jurors and things like that. So it's an art form. It's not a science, but it's a great question from Speech. Another one says, I hope that lawyer has good security because BLM is going to be all over him in his housing, protesting him for being a white supremacist. Yeah, I mean, interesting language, right? I mean, wild to go out there and start accusing black media and black Twitter of stuff like that. Never seen that before. Thunder 7 says, I would hope my lawyer would fight for me the way this one is, because this is clearly a black and white trial. He is trying to point out that the prosecutor is a well-known civil rights attorney. So the actual person he was complaining about is not the prosecutor. It's a family attorney in a civil case who I think is suing the city for cover-up and all of that stuff, trying to recover money on behalf of Arbery. I don't disagree with you on the fact that this guy was passionate as hell, right? He was out there just, getting out there and making his arguments. It was the language that was being used in the argument was very curious, and I was not the only person who was a little bit shocked by that. Let's see. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, I must have missed something. What were we supposed to see in the video that completely ruined all jury pools? How do you feel about this judge so far? I don't know. Did I see something like that? Did I miss that news? Did something happen with Ahmaud Arbery and that tainted all the jury pools? Let's take a look. Maybe I missed something recently. I don't see anything. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Jeremy, but you might be right. I could have just missed it. I prepared this segment earlier in the day, but I don't know. I don't know specifically what you're referencing that would have ruined all of the jurors thus far, but hopefully somebody will educate me about that. How do I feel about this judge? He's a lot more competent than I would say. Well, I don't want to go name names that way, but I like him. I think that he's pretty much even-keeled, seems to be pretty neutral. I like how he's sort of in control of the courtroom. I absolutely loved his facial expression on that last clip there because I felt it. I also was going, when I was listening to that today in my office, I went, what did he just say? Did he just say black Twitter? I think he did, which is interesting. 3 Girlie says, looks like the judge needs some Alka-Seltzer and some headache tablets. Need to have a case sent to him. By the way, those would be called eardrums, not earballs. I don't know why I said that, but, they are officially now earballs in my mind. Monster 1 says, in response to 3 Girlies, my grandmother used to say earballs. I think it's an old school slang term. That being said, I don't know exactly what it means. I have heard it before too. I think it's just when people just say eyeballs, earballs, other balls all over the place. This is a family show. This is a PG show. Be Brave says, oh my goodness, I get the defense attorney's point, but he'll never live down that argument that's probably being blown up all over black media and everywhere else. Defendant is screwed. I also see this trial being only about race. Haven't been following it that closely, but looks like it's already there. That's from Be Brave. Yeah, it's not a bad argument, right? The idea that people would nudge their way onto a jury panel and try to bias the jury panel is not new. In fact, this is what many people who are in black media and black Twitter, I would presume, have long said about jurors throughout America, right? That you get an all-white jury and they convict the black guy. And so, this is not a new phenomenon. This is something that happens, of course, all the time. And we have a pretty well-documented case of this happening with Brandon Mitchell in the George Floyd case specifically 1 year ago. So, yeah, it's not a terrible argument on the face, but the way he said it and the way he framed it is not, it's not ideal, I would guess. Thunder 7 says, Rob, don't really know the details of this case, but wasn't there a tussle with the gun? There was. I don't think it's just a simple homicide. I do think self-defense comes into it. There was no proof that anyone was going to kill Arbery. Maybe hold him for possible burglary. He was found on camera to have gone into the abandoned construction site at least once. Yeah, that's from Thunder 7. I think it's a good point. It's a really a fair interpretation of another side. I just happen to disagree with it. What I saw when I watched it were basically three guys chasing another guy around who was running away. The reason why Arbery was going back that direction is because they sort of chased him into a dead end. He had to turn around. You could see that they were blocking him off, and the vehicle was there. There was some indication, some conversation about a citizen's arrest and whether they had the authority to do that, but I didn't think that they did, right? I thought that these were overzealous people that had no lawful basis to go and seize a suspect under the law. That should have been something that was delegated out to the state, to the police department. They had no business going and doing that, and so they were the aggressors. And when you watch the full video, Thunder, you'll see that Arbery kind of goes around the car, and he does come back in front, and then, yeah, there is an exchange with the gun. I mean, there's no question about it. It does look like he kind of grabs it and pulls it. And that's the moment I think a lot of people are saying, well, there it is. That's self-defense right there. That's when it starts. But again, this is one of those situations where it's difficult to claim self-defense if you were not justified in your aggression. And so you have to sort of work yourself back out of this from the death, from the shooting, from the chasing, from the running around. And if you watch a prior video we did on this, several of them, we actually went through the entire map and talked about all the twists and turns as the scene unfolded. But I think that it is interesting in that you can have two different perspectives. Edon Tess says a reasonable person is putting a cap in your gym bag. So you just put your cap on when you go to the gym. Edon Test says that was said with lots of love to you, sir. That was from Edon Test. I know you got lots of love, Edon Test. I don't even think about it. Be Brave says, your example reminded me of my dad's tactics to deter thieves in the 70s. Razor blades taped to the gas cap worked every time. Yeah, so that's another thing, right? You know, yes. Now, I don't know how that would hold up in court these days, but very interesting tactic. We have another one. Greg Marat says, hey, Rob, unrelated, but BLM in sports just went from you can take the knee to you should take the knee, and now you must take the knee. Yesterday, Quinton de Kock, a South African cricketer, the best player, was fired from the national team for refusing to take the knee. Wow. I always thought politics has no place in sports, and yet here we are. Well, yeah, you're just getting... everybody is just being canceled and thrown out of private industry for not bending the knee. Literally. In this case, it's not bending the knee. South Africa wicketkeeper Quinton de Kock withdrawals for refusing to take the knee. Literally. Not bending the knee. Oh, wow. Okay. So you get fired, thrown out of sports for this. Why not? They're not letting NBA players play because they're not getting the vax. It's a different version of bending the knee. This is actually literally bending the knee, but the other people are also suffering. So don't think that this is not coming for you, boys and girls, wherever you are, right? Currently, it happens to be white, Christian males who are persona non grata right now. But that's going to go everywhere else, to the unvaxxed, probably to white women next, and then we'll just see where it goes. Dave Chappelle is not far off of that list. He's slowly moving up there into the disfavored class because he broke the code that you never sling arrows within your own community. But now he's moving on up. So we'll see as more of the inner division continues to divide where this all goes. Thanks for sending that over, Greg. Hope you're doing well out there in Australia. We have former LEO says, this not to defend their collective stupidity. If they chased him to make a citizen's arrest, he was armed to protect themselves, and the suspect reached out and grabbed the shotgun barrel and pulled it away. If they had their finger on the trigger, then the pulling could accidentally fire the gun. Just saying, it could be an accident and negligence. Former LEO, that's a great point, and we did see that come up. And I think the problem with that is I think he shot 3 times. I think he was 3 trigger pulls. So it's sort of like the first. So if you have a gun and the trigger is here, and you pull it, right, you're going to pull the trigger if you're gripping the gun. But if you go pop, 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 it's kind of a different mechanism there. We'll see. Look, the trial is still unfolding. Be Brave says civil lawyer is an Al Sharpton wannabe. He seemed a lot more competent than Al Sharpton. Farmer's daughter. Whoa! Farmer's daughter is here? We miss Farmer's Daughter. She says, I just got here, so I have no idea what's going on, but I heard a rumor this is a pretty good group, so I thought I would check it out. Seems vaguely familiar. Hello. That's from Farmer's Daughter. We were missing Farmer's Daughter and sent Farmer's Daughter an email. And here she is. She's all good. We had to check on her because we missed her over on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Monster One says, yeah, and Farmer's Daughter, by the way, we've had some serious changes on this channel. You probably don't even know where you are. You're looking around on YouTube. You're saying, where are all the people at? What the hell's going on? It's like you just woke up in one of those zombie movies and everybody's eating each other's face off. It's kind of where we're at right now. Welcome. Monster One says, yes, because balls run the world. All sorts of them. We have Jeremy Matrita says, the New York Post clip in your slide says the search for impartial jurors is posing a challenge because of the viral video of the black jogger's death. That is true, Jeremy. I'm totally out of context, but that is true. We did talk about that. And the sun is coming in again. I put my shades down and it's still coming in. Gonna have to deal with that. Let's see here. Somebody sent this in, no doubt sent in, looks like some statutory law, portion of Texas law for the justified use of deadly force. It is not a simple yes, so the criteria of protecting yourself is safer. This is over from, it looks like Texas. We're talking about Georgia, but this looks interesting. Justified under force, somebody believes that deadly force is necessary to prevent the commission of arson or other theft during the nighttime or criminal mischief during the nighttime. Yeah, so they make it even a little bit more allowable. Yeah, so look, a lot of this is very complicated, as I said. In general, this is broad strokes. In general, the goal is that you preserve property. You protect life over property. But there are some common law carryovers. You see this statute here, this nighttime stuff, anything of this nighttime stuff, if they come in, arson, burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, all that stuff, and it's during nighttime, right? The old law said that was appropriate to consider that to be a very serious threat. So somebody's coming in at night, shouldn't be doing that. And so even if it is for arson or burglary or any of those other things, you can kind of impute that because it's expected that somebody is sleeping in that property, that your life might be in danger. And then Texas, of course, gives you some ability to then use deadly force. So it can be complicated, but I was just talking broad strokes. You know, always consult a lawyer before you consider committing homicide. Okay? That's a joke. That's not legal advice. Don't kill anybody. Be Brave says, I wasn't promoting the razor blade tactic earlier, just a funny story. It is a funny story, Be Brave. Your dad sounds pretty amazing. Grouchy Old Lady says, Jeff Foxworthy slung arrows at his community. They love it. Made him famous. That's true. He kind of did do that, didn't he? He's doing pretty well. We have, I'm Not Gas says, with regards to Dave Chappelle, his complaints were not against cancel culture or victimhood mentality. His only complaint was that his group was no longer at the top of the victim hierarchy. He is not a champion of free speech or common sense by any means. So I think there's a lot of truth to that, I'm Not Gas. It's sort of a rejockeying of that hierarchy that exists. And I've made this point for months now, that eventually there was going to be some division amongst the coalition, right? There was a big coalition, a big group of people that worked really hard to make sure Donald Trump did not get reelected. But once you have a big, giant coalition, you're going to start to see some jockeying taking place about who deserves what. Because the pie is only so big, and it can only be split so many ways. And once one person gets a bigger part of the attention, or the administration starts focusing on this one against that one, right? Like certain demographics now versus maybe certain unions and things, you're going to see divisions, which is why you're seeing the coalition falling apart and Biden's approval numbers just fall into the toilet day by day. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, what if one cuts a finger off and attaches it to the gun trap? Will this pass for a person pulling the trigger? I'm asking for a friend. It's a good question, Jeremy. You know, I like the creativity there. I was going to say, no, it's not going to pass. Don't do it. Yeah, don't do it. Don't cut off anybody's finger and use it to to murder anybody else. Not a good idea. I was trying to think if I could come up with a concoction that would help solve that problem. It's not a good idea. Those were all great questions from our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we record this show every day. Hope you can join us over there. All right. And so we're going to jump into our next segment. Woo! That was another long one. Man, it's a lot. I gotta pick up the pace on some of this stuff. All right, so we're talking about gender policy. Kamala Harris, our vice president, just came out and announced a new national gender strategy, which is amazing because she solved all of the other problems like the border, like inflation, like the supply chain crisis. All of those important things have been resolved, and we can set those aside now and focus on the things that really matter that are probably keeping you up at night. I know I am. Gender strategy and really gender equity and gender equality, because we need a lot more of that. She posted this on Twitter October 23rd, says, President Biden and I, see how that is happening here? So she's sort of slotting into this announcement position. We released our first ever national gender strategy. Wow. This is our vision for the future of our nation, one that is bold in strategy and one that this moment calls for. So I'm really curious, what moment we're in that is so problematic for everybody, but apparently the White House is highly concerned about this. Fact sheet, the national strategy on gender equity and equality. And so this word was something that we started to see as soon as the administration was swept in. They kind of kept it hidden, but now it's out there everywhere. Equity, right? And it's not like everybody starts from the same. It's not that everybody has an equal starting position. It's sort of, it doesn't matter where you're at. We're all going to be smashed down to an equitable level. So it's a kind of a bizarre, basically communist type of ideology, but that's where we're at now. Now, I was looking at this document, and I was going to literally gouge out my eyeballs and earballs and, other important bodily things because it was just so brutal to read. It's 42 pages long, National Strategy on Equity and Equality. And it's bad when you have an acknowledgments section like this that just is basically full of nothing. Acknowledgement of the 42 pages. Who put this document together? Who was responsible for this? Well, the White House created a Gender Policy Council, which is, very appropriate, very important these days. They put together, with critical input, they got deep expertise and all this stuff. They thank over 30 U.S. federal government agencies and everybody for their contributions. So you have a White House Gender Policy Council who is sending letters going around to everybody's offices in 30 different U.S. federal government agencies and sharing their vision, their ideas, and their feedback on the strategy's content. Diverse range of stakeholders, 250 nonprofit organizations, 15 issue-based convenings. So we got 15 like happy hours with the Gender Policy Council, dozens of countries, listening sessions. Just as the formation of the strategy would not have been possible without rigorous engagement with a broad group of stakeholders, we're going to do a lot of work together to guarantee equity, equality, and dignity. All right. So if you're somebody like me who likes to actually get things done and not have, a bunch of meaningless meetings, 15 issue-based convenings, 30 federal agencies, 250 nonprofits, 270 gender non-conforming youth leaders. All right. We have to talk about this in the context of longevity. We have to talk about the idea that this whole conversation about gender seems like it's pretty new, at least on the mainstream level, right? There's going to be people that make arguments. Oh, look, there's been people that have been questioning gender and their sexuality all the way since mankind could stand up straight, which I'm sure is true. I don't doubt that. I'm not making any arguments against that. But what we're seeing here, especially out of this new administration, is a full frontal press with this new conversation. New gender equity. We're talking about, Dave Chappelle, the trans movement. We're talking about, all sorts of just new interesting dynamics, including modifying the way we have and operate our schools so that parents are calling, kids who may be not even teenagers by their preferred pronouns now. The whole conversation about gender and all of this is changing rapidly right in front of our eyes. And I was thinking about this because I consider myself to be somebody who tries to put stuff in the context of history. And I recognize that I have not been alive that long, that there's been a lot of other people on this planet who've come before me, many more who are going to come after me. And so we have to put this whole conversation about gender identity and pronouns in the context of our entire society, don't we? And I was telling you about a book yesterday called Anti-Fragile, written by a guy named Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Brilliant book. in it, he talks about this concept. It's called the Lindy Effect. I want to share with you what this is. It's the idea that certain things have longevity if they've already been around for a certain period of time. What am I talking about? Okay, Wikipedia tells us the Lindy Effect. This is a theorized phenomenon by which the future life expectancy of something, like an idea, is proportional to their current age. Okay, one more time. The life expectancy of some idea is proportional to their current age. So the Lindy Effect is saying the longer something has survived and it's being used, the longer its life expectancy will be. Okay, so the longer it's been around, the longer it will continue to be around. Taleb says in his book, he says, if a book has been in print for 40 years, I can expect it to be in print for another 40 years. That's the main difference. If it survives another decade, then it will be expected to be in print for another 50 years, so from 40 to 50. This simply, as a rule, tells you that things that have been around for a long time are not aging like a person does, but they're in fact aging in reverse. They become more strong, more robust. So what am I talking about this in the context of this gender conversation? Okay, the gender conversation is brand new. So we have to ask ourselves, how long is this going to continue to be with us? Right? It feels like right now that we're in the middle of sort of a new transition into a new way of thinking. What the Lindy Effect talks about is that things have certain life cycles. So for example, I wrote a book, right? I wrote this book. It's been in print for 1 year. What's the likelihood it's going to be in print for another 10 years? Well, probably not that great because it doesn't have a track record of being in print for 10 years. Now, the Bible has been around for quite a long time, 3,000 years, right? If you go back to the Old Testament. And it's going to probably be around for another 3,000 years. Why? Because it's already been around for 3,000 years, which means it's probably going to be around for another 3,000 years. Somebody who comes out and writes a book, the 7 best habits of, wiping your derriere, right? That's probably not going to have the same life cycle as the Bible. And so you can probably be okay negating some of those concepts because other concepts are going to be around for a lot longer. Now, when we're talking about gender, right, I want to be careful to not be overly non-empathetic to people, but the conversation that we're having here is brand new. For millions of years, we've been dealing with biological men and women, biological conversations about race and sex, and about gender identity and sexuality and all of these things. And so when we start talking about a new gender council on equity and equality, we have to put that in the context of several million years of human society. And when we compare it to the Lindy Effect, how long is this going to be around with us? Now, it is a part of the government, so things that are a part of the government almost never evaporate. This is a very interesting aberration in an otherwise several million year long system that has been around for a long period of time. And to go and sort of just change these identities because a new administration formed a new council that's going to set a new policy and write a 42-page document, I think is asking a little bit much. Now, here is what the actual document says. And we're not going to read through most of this because it is just a bunch of word salad, really. I want to show you what it looks like. Here we can see that they're telling us that America is unique among nations in the world because we all have equal dignity and we deserve to be treated equally. Great, right? So that's all nice. Emancipation Proclamation, Civil Rights Act, all good. First ever United States government. This is the first ever, they say, the first ever. So again, think about that in the context of the Lindy Effect. It's the first ever, which means it's going to be interesting to see if they can make this work. So it's the first ever government strategy on gender equity and equality. It's part of a noble American tradition, providing economic security and safety and health and well-being of women, all of that. And I love women and girls, and I want everybody in the world to feel good and happy and have economic prosperity. And I think you do too. I think the conversation is about, do we need a national council to tell us about gender and sex? Well, this White House says we do. The effort is personal to us, they say. We work tirelessly to expand services. Now, as the president and vice president, we're going to do all this great stuff together. That's why we created the Gender Policy Council to ensure that gender and equality are now at the forefront of American domestic and foreign policy. So it's coming to a forefront near you. Now, again, not much is in there substantively. Let me show you the table of contents, and I'll show you what I mean. When you take a look here, you can see it's 42 pages in full. We just read the introduction and some of their guiding principles. I just showed you 1 page of it, but that was 9 pages in its entirety. Now, if you take a look at the most important section of this entire document, we're talking about implementation. Wouldn't implementation be good? You're going to talk about all these catastrophic problems that are wrecking women everywhere, including trans women. So now, what do we do about it? How do we implement some changes? Isn't that a critical part of what your council is working on? You guys are writing a very long book report, talking to all these people all over the world, talking to 250 so-and-so, talking to 70 different companies and 100 different, non-conforming whatevers. And can you tell us what you're going to implement? No, they can't. All they can do is tell us what their strategic priorities are. So from page 10 to page 38 of this entire document, it's all a bunch of word salad garbage. Talking about accelerating economic growth, great. Eliminating gender-based violence, great. How are you going to do it? Well, we don't know because you only have literally 4 pages of implementation from page 38 to page 42. It's 4 pages. And if you actually look at the document, it's really about 3¼ pages. That 4th page, I just rounded up because they are government employees and they just don't know any better. But the rest of this is all just talking, bloviating nonsense. Ensure equal opportunity and equity in education. How are you going to do that? Don't know. Only had 4 pages there. How are you going to promote gender equity in justice and immigration systems? Don't know. But it's a priority. They gave us 2 pages identifying it as a priority. That's very nice. But humanitarian relief. They're also going to talk about gender equity in climate change because that's a huge thing now. They're going to get in there and meddle around with, science, the STEM fields. They're going to talk about advancing participation in democracy, probably voting rights, gender equality under the law, all of this stuff. Great. Sounds amazing. No, I don't want any gender-based violence either. At all. I don't want any of it at all. How are you going to implement it? Well, we got about 3¼ pages on that, right? So it's a big book report from a bunch of just people with way too much time on their hands talking about all of these problems, because when we actually get to implementation, we're going to see what it looks like. Bunch of money, studying, training that's going to be spent around with a bunch of probably their campaign donors. So it's very frustrating when I see the government just waste everybody's time with this stuff. But it also got me thinking about a lot of questions surrounding this, right? Gender equity. If this is really a big conversation we're having here, if this is all just about, women who are being subjected to this horrific, tyrannical, male patriarchal America that are just so dictatorial that it's almost like you're watching a scene from Handmaid's Tale where it's just a bunch of these dudes everywhere just seizing our rights and everything like that. Well, it reminded me of a very interesting interview that I had heard from Jordan Peterson, the good Dr. Jordan Peterson. I'm a huge fan. Read a lot of his work, and I actually sort of consider him to be somebody who is very instrumental in me improving my life massively. He had an interview some time ago with a woman by the name of Helen Lewis over on GQ, and they were talking about these issues. Helen Lewis, you can see, is this woman here on the right. She is somebody who would identify as a liberal, somebody who is sort of a feminist to some degree. I think that she would define herself as that. And it's a very interesting interview. But recall, we're talking about this in the context of gender and equality and equity and all of these concepts. And we picked this interview up right after Helen Lewis says to Jordan Peterson, the good doctor there on the left, says to him, aren't we living in a male patriarchal society? Don't men basically own and run everything? And don't we need more equity? Don't we need more equality since men are running the world? It is such a good interview. If you've not watched that, Jordan Peterson, Helen Lewis, he just continues on in that interview, and it is something to watch. I've probably watched it 5 or 6 times, no joke. It is really good. But his point is one to be taken, right? If you really want to get down to the nuts and bolts of a lot of this, you can play this game every which way. And Helen Lewis comes back at the end of that question and says, well, you can make the same argument about women, can't you? Women are the predominantly raped out there, the ones who are predominantly being sexual assaulted. And that's the point. It's like, yes, we can always have these conversations every single day about who's the bigger victim and what we need to do from a top-down approach to make some structural changes to society. And we've been doing it as long as I've been alive, and we're still complaining about the same problems. And now we're sort of expanding the scope of this conversation into Lord knows what. We have him, hers, and Zim and Zers, and the whole thing is going on. And I got to just, harken back to context. Let's keep this all in context. So let's talk about implementation quickly before we jump into questions here. We can see the 3.5 pages on implementation, not much that's robust. Section 3, the White House Gender Policy Council, they're going to lead implementation of this strategy. So I wouldn't be too concerned about their efficacy in getting anything done, since they wrote a pretty terrible book report. I'd give this book report like a D, not even any good. Whole of government implementation. So they're saying that the policy council, the gender policy council, is comprised nearly of all the president's cabinet and federal agencies and the head of other White House offices. So the whole stinking government is now going to be, hyper focused on gender policy, which is good. So they're going to be communicating this to all of these other agencies, Office of the Vice President, Council of Economic Advisors, blah, blah, blah. They're going to partner with multilateral institutions like the G7, the G20, and then, of course, the Build Back Better World Partnership, which is always fun. I always love to see when the United States is marching in lockstep with the rest of the world leaders, just following some grand design from the World Economic Forum, and everybody's out there marching like dumb seals, build back better every day. It's just really a good indicator, a good symbol of American ingenuity and independence, and leading the way when all of our elected leaders are build back better like dumb monkeys every day in front of a zoo. It's really just pathetic. But all right, so that's what we've got. Now we have more implementation, integration with broader equity efforts. So this is going to be spread out everywhere, different methods. What's this council going to do? They're going to formulate some strategic planning and budgeting. So they're going to identify the gender gaps that they aim to close, the measures, the budgetary, all this other garbage. They're going to then policy and create programs about this. So mainstreaming gender equity and equality considerations, and talk about racial disparities and capitalize on the skills and contributions of people of all genders. So that's great. Measurement of data, measure a bunch of stuff. Talk about the systemic barriers faced by women and girls and other underserved populations, and also focus on more management and training. So remember all of those sensitivity trainings that, like the Lockheed Martin guys, the manufacturers of weapons of war, they would be sort of dragged in and somebody would lecture them about their white male privilege. And those are the people leading the country. So we're going to get a lot more of that, which is very, very exciting. I'm sure you're looking forward to it. And listen, as I've said, right, I don't have any problems with more opportunities and more, equality starting points. But when you start talking about equity and just smashing certain people down so that everybody becomes the lowest common denominator, I don't happen to think that's good for society. What do you think about it? Let's take a look at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. See if you have any thoughts on this gender neutral stuff that is rolling around the United States. Abraham Lincoln says, more claptrap, blah, 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 only makes them feel good about themselves. Meanwhile, Rome burns while Nero fiddles. LGB in the house. Speech Unleashed says, how long do you think it will be before there is a call to rewrite the Constitution in gender neutral terms? Pretty sure there are mostly masculine references in it. It's a good point. Yeah. It's a good point. I wonder what pronouns we could replace it with. Zim and Zers, just to make sure that we're all... Oh, it makes my blood cringe. Makes my actual blood cringe. Yeah, not my back or anything else, my blood. We have Grouchy Old Lady says, the least productive people are usually the ones who are most in favor of holding meetings. They just love to talk and just pat themselves on the back. Oh, who did you speak with? A bunch of really disenfranchised individuals. Well, what are we going to do about it? Well, we're going to make it a priority to help them. Good. Write that down. How many priorities did you identify today there? 11 priorities. Great. Put them in the list. How many pages are we at? 42? Okay, can you shrink the margins? Yeah, expand the margins a little bit. Get it over 40, and then we'll feel really good about ourselves. Be Brave says, in my opinion, the federal government should not have 30 federal agencies, afraid to ask how many federal agencies there are in total. Yeah, it's a disgusting amount. I agree with you completely. I'm Not Gas says, one silver lining to all this woke garbage being crammed down our throats is that the new cool kids are always counterculture, so the pendulum will eventually swing back. Sadly, we'll all be old or dead by then. Hopefully it doesn't take that long. I think the pendulum will swing back a lot more quickly than you think. I think you're going to see some serious consequences of this within our lifetime, no doubt. Thunder7 says, it doesn't matter what Kamala says or does. Nobody's listening to her. Nobody cares. She's even more unpopular than Biden. Guess she never got the memo and her staff are terrified of her, so she's bouncing around like a lunatic, cackling like a hen, laying a bad egg. Hashtag, yeah. From Thunder7. She is just getting weirder by the day, honestly. She was like, did you see, I try not to play the clips of Kamala because it's just so easy to dunk on her, and I don't want this to be just a constant dunking show. But she walked into her surprise party and said surprise to herself. And then she kissed her husband through a mask. She walks into a White House ceremony, and they're all waiting for her to say surprise. And as soon as the door opens, she goes, surprise! And they all go, surprise. And then she turns around, masked, kisses her masked husband right on the lips. I'm just going, oh my gosh. And then she gave some speech. She is the worst politician ever. And it's just going to be hysterical to watch her run. Geomancy Game says, not going to lie, I'm so over the celebration of sex and gender. My problem is that I'm tired of being pushed onto children. Do whatever you want with consenting adults. Leave the kids alone. Why is this such a hard concept for the left to see? That's from Geomancy Games. Subscribe on YouTube. It's a good question. It's a good question. I don't know why it's so complicated. I think it's because if you're of a particular mindset, you want other people to be of the same mindset as you, and you can't sleep at night until everybody is on your team. It's like that meme on the internet. I can't get off the internet. There's somebody here who said I'm wrong, and I have to go solve this problem. I'll be with you in a minute. Somebody said I was wrong on the internet. No, I can't come to bed right now. I have to deal with this. Leave me alone. Right? It's a lot of that. I'm Not Gas says, Rob, I identify as black, neurodivergent, trans woman of color. Give me half your income or I'll sick the feds on you. All right, just send me the account number. I mean, I can't argue with that. Just send it over here. I'll just Venmo it right now. Whatever you need. That's like 7 different line items. Neurodivergent, I don't even know what that one means. But I'm scared of it. Hopefully there's not a whole new list of pronouns with that one. All right, we have a couple more before we get into our last segment. Oh, and the show is running long today because we had to reschedule our men's group. All right, what did I do with those questions? Sorry about that, folks. I got excited. All right, we got a couple more on this one. Peely Wally says, hey, Rob, I've watched a lot of Dave Chappelle of late. He is a comedian telling jokes. People that are offended by jokes really shouldn't watch any comedian shows. Also, you said much of the argument came before your time on the gender argument. I would say just because the Democrats and the woke community are taking their stances on gender doesn't mean that it's the correct way to approach the matter. I agree. Many people in the 1800s and so on were in the right. I'm not against freedom of expression, but when it crosses into areas where it's dangerous or harmful to girls and women, that's where my problems around the matter arise. Yeah, and I was even talking further back, Peely. I was talking about, there's a lot of sexuality, gender, potential dysmorphia, all sorts of issues that I think you can trace back throughout history, right? You can go back to the Roman era or the Greek era, right, and take a look there about how they thought about gender and sexuality and some things there. And you're always going to, I think, in human history, be able to find some deviations from normal behavior. And I don't have any problems with that at all, right? I think that people should be free to express themselves sexually and however they want to. But when you start making it sort of a mandated component of society now, where sports players are being, thrown off of teams for not complying with whatever the woke ideology is of that day. If it's kneeling for BLM, that's one day. If it's now Dave Chappelle, because he had a position on the trans community, he, calls for him being canceled. Now we have a U.S. government, federal government, that is implementing who knows what, because they didn't tell us. They gave us 3.25 pages of implementation. The rest of it is all strategic priorities, so they can implement and do whatever the hell they want. Nobody knows what they're going to do. But they spent a lot of time communicating with 30 different federal agencies to figure it out. Grouchy old Catwoman says, social justice and equity, they seek to redistribute wealth and power between groups to suit what some political authority thinks is the right outcome. That's from Grouchy old Catwoman. Paula, President Harris is here. Rob, how can you be critical of this? It's the most important accomplishment of my administration, which is true. She hasn't really done much else. Nadarb says, so when it all gets boiled down to it, this whole gender thing is a sexually based thing. It's the very basics of it. And if they're grown adults pushing this on minors, how are we not calling this what it is? Nadarb is saying we're done with the conversation. Some YouTube stuff, some YouTube words in here that I don't want to say, but yeah, basically the idea with this comment is that a lot of this is being predatory on children, and that is where Nadarb draws the line, where I think a lot of people would obviously agree with that. We have another one talking about Jordan Peterson says, well done in having an organized office there, dear bucko. I see you've read my 6th rule for life. Hypothetically speaking, if you were to wake up in the other gender tomorrow, what would be the first thing you would do? If I woke up as Roberta tomorrow, I don't know, I'd probably brush my teeth. I think is what I would do, Jordan. And I'd make my bed, just like you say, every morning. Peely Wally says, it's a nonsense, really. Does the everyday person have or feel such discrimination around gender? I'm a long-distance cyclist. I've had a woman slap me behind when cycling. What a laugh. If it was the other way around, would it be a crime, though? I don't believe there is such disparity, but it's always a nice tool to chuck out there to keep any dwelling feelings of tension up. That's from Peely Wally. You got slapped in the butt while you're riding your bike? All right. Soul Viking is here, says, it seems as if Kamala's obsession and prioritization of gender bending is her largest accomplishment so far. Pathetic. It's true. It is. She's very excited about it. That's why she made her own post on Twitter. We got a whole council to give us a strategy. That's nice. Vientika says, I think I pointed this out before, but you know that stereotype that Al Bundy represented of recapturing the glory days? We live in the age of that, except it's Marcy Darcy trying to recapture the glory days. I don't know who Marcy Darcy is, to be honest with that. Should I know? Oh, Married with Children, is that? Oh, that's Bundy's best friend? Who is this? I'm not familiar. I'm not up to speed with my Married with Children, but thank you for that, Vientika. We have a couple others on this segment. Former LEO says, I can't wait for the NFL to meet their equity goals. Let's Go Brandon says, Kamala's advocating for gender equality. Talking about Willie Brown. The Last Villain says, oh, interesting. The power grab is kicking into full gear. Dems playbook, name a problem, find out how to frame themselves as the moral saviors, throw money at it, reject logic. Against affirmative action because the most incompetent rise to the top, but most able to be controlled and molded to master, Kamala is the best evidence. They thought that they could create Obama-Clinton homunculus and got the mix wrong. Equity is the new vehicle for the insidious stuff. Jordan Peterson is a prophet. That's what he says. Yeah, interesting. That's a good comment there from The Last Villain. I'm Not Gas says, hi. Hello, I'm Not Gas. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, the Lindy Effect sounds to me like a logical fallacy. They prop up ideas with fake news, and thus the argument falls apart quickly when the next news cycle comes. They are the dumbest smart people, or was it the smartest dumb people to exist? I can't remember which way it goes. All I know is they try to sound smart, but end up sounding dumb. You know, there was an old concept of sort of rhetoricians, right? The people who only were skilled in rhetoric. They could talk amazingly well, right? They'd go out there, they'd give these big, audacious stories, and they would really convince people and captivate everybody, but they weren't really talking about anything. They just had good voices and good cadence and nice delivery, and they're all sort of, rhetoricians. I think you might be talking about that. Vientika says, problems are like gods. If they didn't exist, society would have to invent them. All right, let's see. We've got a couple more here. Christiana says, not the first ever. They dealt with this in ancient Greece and during the French Revolution in policy, just to name two. I'm sure there are plenty of other prior examples. So I didn't know that, Christiana. I'd be very curious if they were, talking, pronouns and different, legal gender recognitions, like you get to put whatever you want on your passport, is sort of where we're going in this country. I had not known that there was a prior movements of, of course, in ancient Greece, they don't have passports, but you get my point. I'm wondering if there are similar analogs in history. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Former LEO says, I had 2 bumper stickers on my black and white. Question authority and freedom to express yourself. If only it was true. That's from former LEO. And our last one on this segment is from Vientikas. He says, Marcy Darcy was the annoying feminist neighbor. Someone get this man a video library. I know. I'm missing a lot of the references, I think, there, Vientikas. But those were great questions from our amazing community over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. All right. And so we've got one final segment here on the show today. Let's see what we have. Oh, yeah. Alec Baldwin's back in the news. So where are we at? Okay. The district attorney making some news in the Alec Baldwin shooting case. We're going to meet the new district attorney, somebody who just got elected in 2020, and hear what she has to say about potential criminal charges in the Alec Baldwin shooting. We're learning more and more information, including the evidence and facts that seem to indicate that there may have been some actual target practice the very day of the shooting that was taking place by staff members plinking out at targets doing target practice with live ammunition right before the actual shooting took place. So troubling stuff. We're going to meet the district attorney who's going to be prosecuting the case. We're also going to check in and take a look at the actual bullets, because yesterday on the show, we had some conversations surrounding what does an actual bullet look like versus a blank. And so we'll take a look at what those look like all in this segment. Of course, we'll get to your questions from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Starting off with the headline from the Wrap, we see here that it looks like there was in fact live ammo that was being used that very morning for target practice. Crew members had gone, quote, plinking and returned the gun to the set, an insider tells the Wrap, right? Which is just a wild claim, right? Plinking is sort of, you're going out there and you're just going plink, plink, right? You're shooting, just kind of stuff in the desert, and it's a small caliber weapon. You're kind of plinking some, cans and things like that. That's all we're talking about. So apparently the gun that killed Helena Hutchins last Thursday was used by crew members that very morning for live ammunition target practice, coming from an individual with knowledge of the set. Don't know who that is, but a number of crew members allegedly had taken the prop guns from New Mexico set of the Western and gone plinking, a hobby where people shoot beer cans with live ammunition to pass the time. Shooting happened just a few hours later when lead actor Alec Baldwin discharged the gun after David Halls, who we talked about yesterday, thought it was a cold gun, meaning that it did not have any ammunition in it. And so that's just, one problem. Also, we can see from the Daily Mail that they found a loose and boxed ammunition with a fanny pack with ammo on the set where Alec Baldwin accidentally killed her. So they discovered loose ammo. They discovered spent casings. Not clear if the projectiles were live or dummy bullets or blank cartridges. Experts say it raises questions about the organization of the film set. Yes, it does. This is a file photo of what they think the gun, looks like. Loose ammo, loose stuff all over the place. When I think of a fanny pack filled with ammo, I think of a bunch of just kind of, loose bullets, something that doesn't have any formal documentation, right? Somebody just sort of said, oh, we're going to go shooting. And they just dumped a bunch of stuff into a carrying device. It's not like a toolbox that has a lock on it and has a log. What goes in, what comes out, what gets transported, what's in it, right? We talk about chain of custody. You want to be able to track where one piece of evidence went from one person to another. Officer A gave it to Officer B. Officer B put it in his patrol car, drove it down to the station, gave it to Officer C. Officer C impounded it in evidence at 9:47 p.m. Boom, went into evidence. Then the next morning, crime lab tech person A came, took it out of evidence, went and opened up the vials, pipetted them into the headspace vials, and then ran the test, sealed everything up, put it back in evidence, and then another crime lab person took it out. And you want to be able to check the dots, follow it along. Same type of concept you would theoretically think would exist on a set. Somebody would be in possession of the guns and the ammunition so that you don't have a commingling of live ammo with stuff that is not supposed to be live. Doesn't seem like it makes sense if you're just carrying a bunch of garbage around in a fanny pack. Not ideal. And so as more of this evidence is coming out, we're now hearing from the people in charge of bringing criminal charges, in particular this woman, somebody by the name of Miss Carmack Altwies, I think is how we say her name. She is the Santa Fe County District Attorney. She came out on Tuesday, said she was not ruling out criminal charges in last week's fatal shooting. Baldwin was rehearsing with a gun, had been told it did not contain live ammo, but it went off. Her name is Mary Carmack Altwies. She says, quote, "We haven't ruled out anything," District Attorney said in a telephone call. "Everything at this point, including criminal charges, is on the table." She said the investigation was focusing on ballistics in an effort to determine what kind of round was in the gun that killed Helena, the cinematographer, and who had placed the ammunition in the gun. talked about some of that yesterday. During her interview, she says, quote, "There were an enormous amount of bullets on the set. We need to find out what kinds they were." Detectives said they recovered 3 revolvers, spent casings and ammunition in boxes, loose and in a fanny pack, while executing a search warrant on the set. We talked about that search warrant yesterday. Inventory did not specify what kind of ammunition was found on the set. And so, a lot more interesting stuff here that sort of tends to show just gross negligence all over the place. And so now we're sort of, who are the set members who were out there plinking earlier that morning? Who returned the gun? Who gave them permission to take it? How did the commingling of the bullets happen, if that happened? A lot of open questions that this lady's office is going to be looking into. We're talking about this woman here, Mary Carmack Outwees. You can see this is the 1st Judicial District, so this is where she was just recently elected. We're going to learn a little bit more about her. You can see it's sort of in the northern midsection of New Mexico. She is the prosecutor, and so she just got elected. Doesn't have a huge following. Here she is over on Twitter, first JDA, 1st Judicial District Attorney. 25 followers, just getting started over there. And so she joined March of 2018. And now her name is kind of going to be everywhere, isn't it? And so she just got elected in 2020, 1 year ago, and she just got one of the biggest criminal cases potentially of her career that landed on her desk. This is what we heard from her back on November 4th of 2020. New DA, her election assured, said that she's going to be ready to roll. She ran unopposed in the 1st Judicial District, spent a quiet night at home on Tuesday, has been working on her transition plan, new policies and procedures for the next couple of months. Let's see. She says, "I've been working diligently." She won a heated Democratic Party primary in June, and she's eager to start a new chapter at the DA's office. So she's a Democrat. Alec Baldwin is a Democrat. Important to know. "I'm so excited to get started and see what's on the horizon," she wrote, saying that she's going to be 180 degrees different from her predecessor, and outgoing DA Mark Cerna. Well, that's not a very nice send-off for your boss. She's got 70 employees, $6 million budget. She's 42 years old, spent more than a decade as a criminal defense lawyer. Oh, shout out to my people, before Cerna hired her in 2018 to oversee the Special Victims and the Violent Crimes Division. Wow, so a defense lawyer, huh? Very interesting. Now, she said, made an actual public statement about the shooting, posted this on October 24th, says, "The case is still in its preliminary states of investigation. We are assisting the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office. We've offered our full support to them. At this time, we do not know if charges will be filed. We will look into all facts and evidence of the case with great discretion and have further information at a later time. Our thoughts are affected, with all affected by this tragedy." And so, the cynic in a person would say, well, you might want to charge somebody, because that's going to be a big, big career marker on your case, but only if you can get the conviction. So she's doing some serious digging on this. We know from her interview, she said that detectives are still interviewing people who were on the set. She said it's probably weeks, if not months, of follow-up investigation that we're going to need to get to the point of charging, right? So we're looking at weeks, 2 months of a continued investigation, which I think is probably fair. I mean, candidly, no rush on this. Miss Carmack says that she was aware of news reports suggesting that crew members had used guns with live ammunition, but said those reports are unconfirmed. Mamie Mitchell, script supervisor, called 911. She hired Gloria Allred, and I think we listened to her, Mamie Mitchell, earlier this week, maybe yesterday even. Statement said that they would be conducting their own investigation because there are many unanswered questions. Miss Allred said that, right? So Gloria Allred now is going to be digging into this as well. She's a big name lawyer, and she's going to be conducting their own investigation into the incident. So now what are you seeing? Are you seeing other people who want to come in here and make a name out of this case? Because you're seeing a lot of the sort of the pivot and the new public relations game that is being played, right? The Alec Baldwin camp, it's not his fault. It's everybody else's fault. It's David Hall's. It's the armorer who's 24. Alec Baldwin saved a child that one time, or he almost didn't shoot a gun when there was a kid nearby. You know, he's a saint. He's somebody who could never screw this up. So his public relations team is doing an amazing job. Is spreading the blame around to everybody, get in front of the story. They're absolutely doing that, which they should be doing because he is a public figure and he has the money and the resources to start his defense before the charges are even filed. They're doing a good job of this, right? They are getting out there in the court of public opinion, and they're making sure that Alec Baldwin is the least culpable person in here. It's everybody else who is involved. But this prosecutor is saying, well, not so fast. We are going to take a look at it. And she has a very strong interest in considering that, right? The spotlight is going to be on her county for some period of time. She is now an elected official, a politician, so somebody who can really make a big name out of this case. She is expected to speak with reporters on Wednesday morning at a news conference. Says, we have complex cases all the time, but this kind of complex case with these kinds of prominent people, no, we don't have that. Yeah, and so she's very, she's got a tall order ahead of her. And I don't mean to make, to sort of impute any ill motives to this prosecutor, but it is something that, you got to take a lot of time and look through with a fine-toothed comb and a close microscope. So she says here that she took issue with some of the descriptions of the firearm that was used as an incident as a prop gun, saying that terminology, which is used in some of the court documents, could give the misleading impression that it's not a real gun. It was a legit gun, she said, without naming what kind of firearm it was. It was an antique era appropriate gun. Detectives from the Santa Fe County are proceeding carefully, citing a large number of witnesses and the need to methodically collect ballistics and forensics evidence, which they, of course, are going to be doing. We have Hannah Gutierrez Reid. This was the armorer that we were talking about. She was apparently named on Friday as the person who loaded Baldwin's vintage gun being used in the gunfight scene set. She's not looking particularly good, right? She, we saw some different pictures of her. I'm sure she's extremely stressed about potentially being indicted for murder. So not good. But it is an interesting conversation that's happening now. Who was the final person who loaded the gun? What type of ammo went into the gun? DA has her hands full, no question about it. Yesterday, we talked about the difference between a live round with an actual projectile at the tip of the bullet versus a blank cartridge. This is a diagram of what they look like, right? This is just two pictures of a live round and a blank cartridge. And you can see that one has an actual projectile at the top of the bullet. This is the piece of the bullet that actually goes out and strikes the target. This is a blank that doesn't have it. It's just sort of crimped up at the top, whereas it's normally crimped around the projectile, and then the pin strikes the primer, ignites the gunpowder, explodes, causes a bunch of gas, launches the projectile out the barrel of the gun, whereas a blank cartridge has all of that, just minus the projectile. So we're just missing this final component here at the very top. Here's what it looks like in practice. So this is what, theoretically, what Hannah Gutierrez is sort of looking at when she's putting into the guns. Now, she might be looking at something different that has sort of a dummy head or something like that. But, that's basically what you're looking at. It's amateurish to think that one looks like the other. That is a regular bullet. That is a blank that doesn't have a projectile at the head. It's just crimped. So when this explodes, this just pops open and all you get is gas coming out of there versus launching a well-machined projectile. So, it's like, how could you mistake the two? Seems pretty negligent. Okay, let's see what you have to say about this over from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com on the Alec Baldwin case. Let's see if we have any thoughts on this one. We have first one from I'm Not Gas says, "Dear Lord, the layers of negligence on that production set is insane." It's like, did anybody even think about this at all? Anybody? Not really. Ty Livin says, "All three of these people are criminally liable, in my opinion. Gun safety is paramount." I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I've said this many times, right? Everybody's got to look at it and check it. The person who pulls the trigger doesn't get to escape liability just because they trusted somebody. And then you have to sort of take, Alec Baldwin and sort of impute that back, any responsibility back to him. If he is the lead person, one of the producers of the show, the primary actor, the person who put the whole thing together, doesn't he have a duty to not hire negligent people to handle the guns? I think will be another argument. We'll see. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, I see where they may be going with this line of thinking for a potential defense. I'm pretty sure if one made the argument that guns don't kill people, the person who loaded the gun does would not go over very well. Yes. Yes, I see what you're saying, Jeremy. You're splitting that argument up. I think the main argument is that guns kill the people, not the people kill the people. And so it's all very confusing. Nancy Pelosi's Fun Bags is here, says, I want Rob to play bongos with my bongos. Oh, God, the show's almost over and Nancy Pelosi comes skidding in here. Ty Living says, in a follow-up, especially Alec Baldwin, you never take the word of someone it's a, quote, cold gun. Check it out for yourself. Boom, criminally liable, says Ty Living. Yeah, it's not bad. We have Avienticus with a long comment, says, I've been hearing more and more information coming about this armorer person, and I just have to ask, outside from having a knowledge of weapons, how hard can it be really to be an armorer? Seems like something that would be a job of common sense and attention to detail. Keep everything organized, inventoried, accounted for, and maintain weapon safety. What more do you really need than that? The stories about this armorer, in my mind, show more of an endemic issue of society, sheer incompetence. From this to the propaganda we've been subjected to over various issues over the past few years, to the fact that when I ask for a burger with no pickles, there's still pickles on it. There's just rampant incompetence everywhere. Pickles are disgusting. Fight me. Which I'm sure you're going to have some takers on that. You know, I'm not somebody who would get riled up about pickles to the point of physical conflict. Probably. Supply chain problems are picking up. Pickles might be all that's left. In which case, I might have to fight you over them. You know, I just don't know. We have another one from Edon Tess says, from all the info coming out, sounds like there was poor handling and protocols by the crew. When dealing with firearms, you always need to follow the safety protocols on a set. I'm certain that Alex was relying on the crew to ensure that arms were handled properly. He was an executive producer on this film, so I can see that people are eager to string him up. But there are so many people that are tasked with safety during live fire explosions and SFX, I don't think Alec is directly responsible for this accident. I'm an actor and stunt performer, and have many sets where there is live fire. I know these armorers and all that I have known take great caution around all firearms. I've even done a movie where I was shooting directly at the camera, and it was very unnerving. I don't like the feeling of shooting towards live persons. That's from Edon Test, an actor in the house, with some very good context on that. Thanks for sharing that with us, Edon Test. You know, it's one of those things. It's like, it's really hard to understand the context if you're not working in that space. But what we see from an outside perspective certainly looks pretty bad, right? Certainly looks pretty bad. But I also understand your point. You know, Alec is sort of the third person in the chain, and he's got to be focused on doing his job. You know, I can sort of equate this to stuff that happens in court. And I'll tell you this, if you go in front of a judge and you blame your legal assistant because a motion was screwed up, you know what the judge says? I don't care. I don't care who at your office did that. I don't care if it was your legal assistant. I don't care if it was some new lawyer. I don't care if it was an intern. I don't care who did it. Your name is on the motion, and it's in my court, so you have to answer for it. Otherwise, don't submit stuff with your name on it if you don't want to be held responsible for it. It's happened to me many times, unfortunately, right? Judge will say, you're responsible for this, Mr. Grueller. It's your law firm. So you have to answer for this. I say, yes, I know. I'm sorry. We're going to fix it. It's never going to happen again. And we do. We fix it and we make sure it never happens again because it's my word. And I go in front of a judge and I make that clear. But it stops with me, even though I had nothing to do with it. So I think some of those same principles might apply here, Edon Tess, but maybe not, right? I also understand, you know, there are going to be mistakes that are made, and I often don't check everything before it's handed to me. Now, I'm not pointing a gun and shooting somebody, but it's, you know, it's also high stakes. So I understand building systems and relying on your team and trusting the people that you work with and relying on them to make sure that they're looking out for you. Didn't happen here. Thunder 7 says she was a Democrat, but she also is the head of a union that was protesting poor conditions on the set. The original armorer left in disgust, claiming the safety standards were not being followed, and then Baldwin hires the ditzy bimbo to take care of the guns. He should be charged. He's a producer. He's responsible, period. He would have taken better care if the gun were going to be pointed at him. Ooh, that's a good point, Thunder 7, right? the golden rule, as it were. Geomancy says, as far as I'm concerned, Baldwin has to live with what he did, accident or not, but someone better be held responsible, and my fear is nobody will be held responsible. As much as I despise Baldwin and his idiotic statements on politics and guns, part of my heart goes out to him. Somebody screwed up royally. I think that's because you've got a good heart, Geomancy. Look, I think that you can easily take criticism towards Alec Baldwin. I know that I do, but I don't think in my heart that he wanted to go and murder somebody, right? His life is catastrophically ruined, as is everybody else involved there, not to mention the actual people who were shot, like Helen Hutchins, right? It's a tragedy. And so I don't take glee in that at all. And I don't want to see people burned at the stake over tragedies, but we do want to make sure that we have a functional justice system, and there's not two tiers of justice, one for you and me and one for everybody else who is a part of the inner circle and that club. And so that's why we hold these things accountable. We cover the stories, we call balls and strikes as best as we can see them, and we talk them through, but we also want to make sure that our empathy is not evaporating out of our souls. And so I agree with you. I saw the picture of him. I know he's an actor, and I know he's probably good at selling that stuff, but I believed it, man. He just shot and killed somebody, and I would not wish that upon anybody, no matter how much you disagree with them politically. There's that saying that true happiness is seeing your neighbor fall off the roof. And, to some degree, there's some truth to that. As long as they just get back up and they, can go back inside and, get back to being that jerk neighbor. But, you don't want to see people actually injured and hurt and harmed. And I don't like to see people in tragic positions. Alec Baldwin deserves good representation. He deserves a fair trial, a clean shake. But he's got to accept, it's an accident. But somebody's dead, and there needs to be accountability for that. You don't just get to say, whoa, whoops, I guess we should probably increase those protocols there the next time we do one of these things. Geomancy says, we already read that one. Good to see you, Geomancy. He's on YouTube. We have former LEO says, too bad the armorer decided to, after the fact, destroy potential evidence by unloading the weapon. Competency shows. Yeah, I'd be very curious if that happened. Somebody ran over there, swap some stuff out. Guessing it probably did happen. Thunder7 says, more coincidences that tell me a lot more is going on here. The set of the movie was 40 miles from Epstein's baby-making ranch. Oh, he has big houses where VIP guests like Clinton's Prince Andrew stayed, and Santa Fe is a very liberal place. They are not going to charge Baldwin in this town. I do think it was a setup, and poor Helena was meant to die. Whoa, that is some seriously spicy conspiracy theory stuff, and I happen to love it. Thanks for sharing that, Thunder. Greg Murat says, Rob, this is linked to the last segment. I'm not sure if you know about this, but by messing around with certain serotonin transmitters, they made mice switch sexual preferences, controlling for hormones. Very interesting to see, as rats are genetically, biologically, and behaviorally very similar to humans. I don't think there was much follow-up on a study done on it. Probably too controversial. Well, Alex Jones said they're turning the frogs gay, right? So, this is not far off from that. Not that anybody is frogs, but certainly, if you take a look at everything that's going on just with, honestly, masculinity in this country, it is mostly nowhere to be found, and it's a sad thing. Don't know if that has anything to do with serotonin or whatever they're giving the frogs, but I think I understand what you're putting down here, Greg. And it is very curious indeed. We have another one from I'm Not Gas says, the fact that they even have real firearms on the set is insane. Blank guns exist precisely because of this risk. Blank guns are able to chamber live rounds due to blockages in the chamber. How Hollywood still uses real guns after Brandon Lee's death in the same fashion is just beyond stupid. Yeah, again, I'm not an actor, but it does seem like that is not a good strategy. Perry Masonary says, isn't Baldwin the new spokesperson for gun safety? I think didn't he sign a petition or something like that? Former LEO says, a dummy round would have a projectile, but no propellant, no powder. Okay, so I think we're talking about, we've got dummy rounds, then blanks, and then actual real bullets. So one would have a top, but not the propellant. So it would look like a bullet, but nothing mechanically would happen. So that would, I think, be less useful in a movie, right? Where you want a explosion, you want the powder, you want the propellant. So you would use a blank, not a dummy. So we have the three different a real bullet, blank, no projectile, but with powder, and a dummy with a projectile, but no powder. Okay. So that's from former LEO. Good distinction there. Bowdlerize me. Bowdlerize me says, hey, Rob, well, shoot, I think I hit the target when I say it's interesting that some people that take aim at gun advocates while pulling the trigger on movies about Western and guns. Oh my gosh, there are too many puns in there. I have to take this over again. This is just outstanding here. Hey there, Rob. Well, shoot, I think I hit the target when I say it's interesting that some people that take aim at gun advocates while pulling the trigger on movies about Western and guns. Love your show. I think that's probably a record. It's like a Guinness Book of World Records for the number of firearm puns that you can cram into one sentence. Outstanding. Very well done. A+ on that one. Feisty Lady says, since it was a Western movie they were filming, it should be rather easy for all involved to have checked the gun. Any revolvers I've seen handled only hold 6 shots, and the portion where they are loaded just flip out to the side where all the chambers are easily visible. Not like a semi-automatic gun where there's a magazine and possibly one in the chamber. Yes or no? Absolutely yes. Exactly right. We're talking about 2 different mechanisms, aren't we? We have the magazine that slides into the bottom of a handgun that is a... I was going to take mine out, but I think that is problematic here on YouTube. I don't know what the rules are about any of that. But yes, you can't see anything. And so you have to open it and sort of clear it to make sure that it's empty. Versus a revolver where the entire mechanism just sort of flips out. You can look right through it. Oh, nope, nothing in there, nothing in there, nothing in there. Close that puppy back up and visually inspect it quite easily, right? Even when it's closed, you can see the chambers that are on the exterior of the revolver. So yeah, you're exactly right. I think you covered it exactly right, which is why a lot of people are so shocked that this was easily mistaken. Monster One says, I think Baldwin is a piece of garbage. That being said, I don't think he's responsible. I highly doubt on a movie set they want actors messing with the equipment. If during a scene the actor was wearing a pull harness, the actors wouldn't be expected to mess with it to ensure safety. That's why they hire stunt professionals. That same applies to guns. It would be ridiculous to expect actors to be firearm experts. They hire people for that. In my unpopular opinion, the blame falls solely on the inexperienced armorer and the director. Whoa, that's a juicy one. And he says, that said, he's still human garbage. That's from Monster One. So, Team Alec on that one. Yeah, I think that's, I think a lot of people will agree with that. I'm not sure where I stand on it yet. We're going to have to see more. No Doubt says, in order to have poor safety protocols, you have to have safety protocols. Evidence to support their existence hasn't come out yet, which would be another good indicator that maybe there's some criminality here. The Last Villain says, only good thing about this situation is we don't have to see any Alec Baldwin productions anytime soon. You shouldn't get $15 an hour if you can't keep pickles off of someone's sandwiches. Pickles are great, though. You wouldn't win that fight. The Last Villain versus Vienticus, I think that was. Which is, yeah, we can put that on pay-per-view locals. I like it. Eat on Test says, sorry for the typos, typing fast. I will add, though, that performers on set have the right to inspect all firearms they are aiming or being aimed at them. This was a rehearsal and someone called out cold gun, and I can see how he thinks it is unarmed. I always checked. Also, executive producers don't usually hire armorers that is UPM or some production type. Right. So there we go. Right. So good context there. So, how far removed from the decision-making process from that chain of command was Alec Baldwin, in fact? Is he sort of making hiring decisions, or is he somebody that hires somebody who makes the hiring decisions? I don't know. Eat on Test does though. Christiana says, first of all, A, I love pickles, and B, actors couldn't possibly be held responsible for guns. Which actresses would ever be able to play James Bond in a gender bender version if they had to know gun safety? I wouldn't know a safety from a trigger if my life depended on it. That's from Christiana. Which is, it's a good point. I guess you could say that, right, about a lot of these Hollywood people and a lot of people out. They don't know anything. Read from the script, say something, and just let everyone else do all of the other work. So sort of agreeing that you can separate yourself from some of the responsibility of managing that firearm because you've delegated that to other people. You have an armorist who's there. You have an assistant director who's supposed to be making those decisions and doing a good job on them. And they botched it. It's not your fault. It's theirs. It's a good concept, Christiana. And I'm not trying to belittle actors or Eat on Test or anybody out there. It's an interesting channel. Monster One says, what is Geomancy Games' channel? I looked but couldn't find it. Geomancy? Where's your channel? We're looking for it. Monster One's looking for it. I think it's just Geomancy Games. I'm pretty sure I'm subscribed over there. We have Ty Livin says, I think it's the hormones they put in our foods that's causing the masculinity to evaporate. Everybody's just pumped with testosterone and other preservatives. Probably some truth to that also. Jay, he says, love the show as always, Rob. Always so informative and full of great info. It was great to meet your brother Joey this morning, and happy birthday to your stepdad. That's Gregory. Happy birthday, Greg. Yeah, and Joey was with us this morning. Joey works here at our law firm on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and so he came by this morning, and we did a locals live stream, and you got to see him at the very end of that stream. He sort of popped in and said, what do you need, Rob? And I said, come on the show. And so we did a live stream at the very end of that. Alex Jones is here, says the lizard people are drinking the blood of children, and they're turning the frogs gay. I think it's the interdimensional space aliens that are doing that. Oh, let's see. No Name here says hollow points sort of look like blanks. Not sure why live rounds would be allowed on a Bonanza ranch. Plenty of homes around that area. Good insight. Former LEO says dummy is used for the camera angles during the loading. Right, so the dummy looks like a real bullet, whereas a blank does not. That makes sense. Oh no, sent this comment. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, this is a good one. Let's open this up, shall we? Oh, here's Alec Baldwin, folks. Next time you're taking an Uber ride and you get in and you see this, you're going to want to get a different driver, right? Find a different, a team of people to get you where you need to go that day. Not ideal to be in that vehicle. That was from Oh No. A couple other ones. Grouchy old lady says, old cat lady says, why not just remove the firing pin on prop guns? And I think it's because you want that explosion, right? You want that blank in there so you get the actual projectile that causes that flash that is going to be so nice on camera. Monster One says, Rob, you heard the armorer say she looked down the barrel to check. I did. I saw that yesterday. She says, I just look at it. And, oh yeah. Oh, let me see. It looks clean. It looks good. Yeah, you can use it. Cold gun. Go use it. Former LEO says, not a period piece revolver. They use a loading port, load PR, unload one round at a time. A lot of good gun knowledge today. Monster One says, whoa. I'm definitely not on Team Baldwin. Like I said, he's garbage. Thanks for clarifying that, Monster One. Sorry for the mischaracterization. I don't want to do that on this show. But you just say he's not culpable of criminal liability, which is fair. Vantica says, I'm happy to start the pickle war. I accept the challenge, dear villain. Let us duel by dance-off. Oh, gosh. It's going to be a wild UFC fight. We're going to have, what is it? Dance, Dance, Go? Vanticus and I'm Not Villain. Dancing off. Tap dancing. Realtor Patty says, do a poll. Pickles or no pickles? It's a good question. You know, I'm also curious about tomatoes, too. Should I spoil where I'm at on these conversations? I know where I stand on the pickles and the tomatoes. You know, I'm not passionate about it one way or the other, but I have opinions on it. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, I think the previous commenter was onto something. An actor would have the expectations of a prop gun being properly loaded with blanks if someone has written in their job description, ensure firearms to be safely cleared of live rounds and loaded with proper blanks. Right? You're trusting your person to do the job right. You know, I don't know. Does a surgeon, if they hand them the wrong tool and they gut somebody, can they blame the person handing them the tool? I don't think so. Got to check the tool. Pretty sure. Don't know. Never done surgery. Rick Sanchez. Hey, Rob, I'm Pickle Rick. How come people in your chat don't like me? I don't really know who that is, but be nice to Pickle Rick, everybody. New to locals, love the show. Hollow points do look similar to blanks, but pretty sure that Bonanza Creek has plenty of houses. Not sure why you even have live rounds available. Yeah, so the hollow points, or they even have, what are those called? Talons. There's a bullet. I don't know any of those. They actually look like hollow points, and they have this little pin right in the head of the projectile so that when you shoot it, it hits a person or a target, it expands into this mushroom, and it takes the actual projectile and it turns it from a bullet that is just, you know, nice and sort of precision into this exploding, looks like a mushroom. And so what that does is a lot of damage on the other end of the target. So, but they look like the crimping at the top of the blank that we talked about. Tree Mendes says, speaking of Joey, how many girlfriends does he have that he has a favorite? Sounds like a bit of a player. Really enjoyed meeting him. Yeah, Joey is a ladies' man, let me tell you that. So, gentlemen, if you are concerned about, losing your significant other, exercise caution around my brother Joey. He has a lot of girlfriends. Currently, he has one, but as you heard from him today, a lot of drama going on. It's relationships are tough, you know this, and it's complicated. So he's, dealing with drama back and forth. He'll get through it, though. He'll be all right. We have no doubt says the cylinder on single action revolvers don't flip out, and each chamber must be inspected individually through the loading gate. Okay, well, there you go. There's a correction. So I was thinking about the revolvers that I'm familiar with, but apparently there's a different mechanism there. Thanks, no doubt. Nadarb says, Michael Malice had a good tweet. Says, I wonder when Alec will start shooting again. Michael Malice is such an instigator, and I absolutely love it. When's he going to start shooting again? This is a good one. Look down the barrel to check. That's what she said. From another comment. A couple more here. I'm Not Gas says, the fact that they could even afford to go plinking with ammo prices these days is just proof this is Hollywood privilege. Also, Team Pickle and Pickleback Martinis. Hollywood privilege. It's true. Ammo's expensive. And have you tried to find it? It's not readily available anymore. So they're just going around plinking off beer cans with very valuable ammo. Typical Hollywood liberals. No one you know is here says, I was in the middle of typing my first comment ever, but Monster One stated my thoughts perfectly. Damn it, Monster One. Alec was not at fault for what was supposed to be the responsibility of another person that is on set. I still dislike Alec Baldwin. You got to be very crystal clear about that. Nobody wants to be thought of as somebody who is sort of, moderately endorsing Alec Baldwin. Not ideal. Mustang Jeff says, pickles and tomatoes, Rob. 2 for 2 on those. Get those veggies. Monster One says, yeah, pickles and tomatoes, pineapple on a pizza, fight me. Ugh. Whoa, pineapples on a pizza. Okay, now we're getting into some serious business, some serious territory. The Last Villain says, I'm black. You would be better off in the fight. I love you though, man. No violence. Just give me your pickles. See, we can bring people together on this show. We don't need any violence. We just need a mutual exchange of hamburger condiments. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, pickles versus no pickles is not a proper argument. The real argument is sweet versus dill pickles. For the record, I always prefer dill. That's from Jeremy Matrita. Oh, what a show. I love it. ED says, that's E. Dantes says, those are called frangible rounds. I think he was talking about those Talon rounds that I was talking about that turn into those mushrooms. Very, very expensive. Very, very deadly. Of course, that's the reason people buy them. You're talking about hollow points, I do believe. That's from Ty Livin. Let me see if I can find an actual picture of this Talon round. Black Talon is what I was thinking of. Yeah, so here on Wikipedia, you can see this is what it looks like. Now, I'm not even sure if these are legal anymore. Primarily intended for law enforcement and personal defense use. This is what they look like. When you zoom in, you can see it kind of does look like it's actually crimped right there. See that? But it's not. It sort of looks like this crimping right here. This is a law enforcement round that sort of looks like that, but it, of course, is not. And what instead we see is this is an actual projectile. So this is all actual metal. It's not just the crimping of the brass casing. So they would on a blank they would cramp this brass here, but this is an actual projectile. It's just formulated in a way where this actually sort of spreads open as it comes out of the barrel of the gun. Air goes into the front of sort of this divot that's carved out in the front of the projectile, and the projectile actually sort of mushrooms when it hits, and it causes just a catastrophic exit wound coming out the other end. So that's, that's you could see a misidentification of a round like that and a crimped blank, but I can't imagine why any of those would even be on the set in the first place. Good thought from Ty Livin. Christiana says the surgeon actually calls for the tool. Totally different situation. Overruled from Christiana. All right, that's fair. I'll take it. Thank you, Judge. Craven. Oh, I can't read that one. Somebody named Craven. Last name, not going to say it, says, Rob, I love tomatoes. You saw what that name was. Almost got me on it. Alec Baldwin says, I accidentally grabbed the gun labeled "Let's Go Brandon." My bad. Cold gun. We have Ty Livin says, all the fixins, please load it up. Everything on top of that burger. I'm with you. Load them up. Vientikis says, you may be black, but I'm a fat guy. Everyone loves watching a fat guy dance. I'll set aside the pickles for you. It's total harmony. Eat your heart out, Joe Biden. We're bringing America together with condiments and vegetables. Resident Bedoin says, does this mean that Russ will appear at my local theater before or after Top Gun Maverick? I'm looking forward to Top Gun Maverick. I was a huge Top Gun fan. I'm looking forward to seeing that one. And I happen to like Tom Cruise too. I know that a lot of people don't, but I think he's pretty hilarious and great. I'm Not Gas says, I also recommend kimchi to everyone who likes pickles. It's spicy pickled cabbage or pickled radishes, depending on the version. And now we're getting into just crazy town, right? This is kimchi. It's like, are you saying pickled pickles? Out of control. Although I have had it. Yeah, I've had it. I like my veggies. I like most vegetables. I don't have any problems with most of them. My friends, those were a lot of amazing questions. We went into a whole new uncharted territory here, talking about hamburger condiments, and I'm glad we did because we learned a lot about everybody. We've got one final question on this segment before we jump up and out of here. Ty Livin says, I know that as a hollow point and shot those at the range on occasion, once had a .357 Magnum Police Ruger. Big gun for a little itty-bitty girly. I eat kimchi every day. That's from Ty Livin. Yeah, that is a big gun. No question about that. That is a very big gun. And it sounds like you have a very nice, healthy diet there, Ty Livin. And I'm glad that you are eating well. Those, my friends, were amazing. Oh, my goodness. We just got 5 other questions. Brandon says, how did I become so popular? I surely appreciate the support. We know who Brandon is. Rick and Morty say that Pickle Rick is with us. Sorry, Rick turned himself in. We've got a lot of the pickle comments. I'm Not Gas says, kimchi. I can't read that. I can't understand. We're getting some very interesting language. Let's see. 3 Girlies says, I'm sorry I missed your brother today. Don't you have your meeting tonight? I do, but we rescheduled it today. We had a men's group. We went out to dinner with everybody on Sunday. And so we had that dinner, and we are not doing our men's group tonight. It's Tuesday. Going to pick back up on it next week on Tuesday because several people had conflicts. So we get to run live tonight, longer tonight, and have some fun. But it is very important that we continue to meet. We just met on Sunday. So we are also Joey, the Joey video, it's still on Locals. So if you missed that, you can watch that. I just talked about some show prep stuff. I talked about the new Rumble Locals acquisition. So Rumble's now bought Locals. They both announced that today. So I talked about that earlier on the Locals stream earlier this morning, and my brother made a cameo at the very end of that stream. So if you missed that, it's still available over on Locals. Former LEO says hydraulic shock opens up the hollow point, as in flesh, meaning as flesh. Hydraulic shock, as in the human body. Realtor Patty says, I pick sweet pickles and green tomato, no red tomatoes. Ooh, we get a little bit of variety in this one. Monster One says, did you see Biden try to shift the Brandon narrative? I saw the White House come out and say something like they don't recognize it, like they're kind of not familiar with this new phenomenon, which is totally nonsense. They live on Twitter all day. I'm Not Gas says, mukbangs are those streams where people just gorge on an insane amount of food. I'm not familiar with that. Do people do that? You know, we were talking about the hot tub streamers on Twitch. We're debating whether or not I should put on a bikini and just start streaming from hot tubs. And I got a very thorough, resounding no vote on that, thankfully, from everybody. So that's not going to be happening. Same thing with the mukbang. Probably not going to be happening here either, although they are very interesting ideas. We're just going to continue to watch the watchers on this show, my friends. And those were all the great questions on this segment from our amazing community and our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come check us out and be a part of the recording live every day, 4 p.m. Arizona time. And that, my friends, is it for the show. We are going to welcome some amazing new people who just joined our community. Let's give them a big, warm welcome. In particular, we've got the AI guy, which is just outstanding. AI, I think, is a very fascinating topic. And we have the guy now. The AI guy is now here. We have Martini Junkie, who's also in the house, joined up for the year. Welcome, Martini Junkie. Just Cowles is here. And is that a welcome back? I think that might be a welcome back. But Just Cowles is here. We have a cold painter also joined up for the year. Welcome, a cold painter. And Damn Girl also signed up in the house with a nice year-long contribution. Michael N. We've got Bill Givens. We've got our guy 2. We've got Flow Red. We've got Maxim 15T in the house. Sir Darren 1. Firedat. And V-Dubs Hanny. Last week we had Max922, Tsunami Tommy, Sugar Britches, Ad Meliora, Pretty Darn Nice, Sovereign Lion, Lynn Fish, and Germs, all joined up over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where you can support the show, be a part of the recordings, get to connect with people, and of course, join us on our monthly Locals meetup, which is taking place Saturday, November 6th from 7 to 8 p.m. It's a lot of fun. We gather around, talk about whatever is going on in the world, right? And I don't really prepare anything. It's just sort of an open forum. We are now sort of at the point where we're getting to know people, and so we're checking in with other people. Hey, what's going on with this and what's going on with that? And so it's part of the grand vision of building a community, sort of separating away from some of the other more volatile communities and other places on the internet, and build a wholesome place where we can connect with people and talk about things that are important to us and our lives, offer support, and build an environment that is useful for everybody. And so we're doing that. We want you to come and be a part of it. Saturday, November 6th, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. It is a lot of fun. You can use pseudonyms. You can keep your camera off. That's okay. I might call you an FBI agent, but that's okay. And it's a lot of fun. So come check that out. And I think that is it for me for the day, my friends. We're going to get out of here. Quick reminder that we're going to be back here same time, same place, doing this all again. We're going to be recording live 4 p.m. Arizona time on Locals. That's 7 p.m. Eastern time. The show is also live at that time at a number of different platforms, including our friends over on Rumble, over on Twitch, and on Twitter and Facebook. The show then premieres at 10 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube with a live chat that's available. And I poke in on the chat from time to time just to say hello. If you leave any super chats during that premiere, I cover them the next day on this recording. And so feel free to do that if you want to just say something during the premieres when they go live on YouTube. As always, appreciate your comments, your thoughts, anywhere you're watching this video. Always appreciate a share, a recommendation of the show to somebody close to you in your life. Helps the channel grow, and it means the world to me. And so we're done with the program today, but we're going to be back here tomorrow to do it all again. We're recording again 4 p.m. Arizona time, 7 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll see the premiere afterwards elsewhere on the internet. And that, my friends, is it for me. Hope everybody has a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.